Chapter 399 Very Intimate. Chapter 399 Very Intimate. That was very well said, little brother. Feng Wu was having a hard time keeping up her acting, but she had to, after Feng Xiaoqi asked the questions in his anxious voice. She couldn't back out now. She had started this and she had to make it to the end. Gosh, crying like this was so exhausting. Luckily, the Crown Prince was convinced by her acting. After quickly glancing at Feng Wu, he rubbed his nose and reflected on the possibility that he had maltreated Feng Wu. Sister, is it because of him? I'll get back at him for you. After that, Feng Xiaoqi charged at Jun Linyuan like a dauntless calf. As much as Feng Xiaoqi revered Jun Linyuan, he cared about his sister even more. Anything his sister said was right. All his sister's orders had to be carried out without question. His sister had always been composed and level-headed, which convinced him that his sister had to have been so abused for her to cry like that. Seeing Feng Xiaoqi dashing off like a reckless calf, Feng Wu grabbed him from behind right away. Threatening her with Feng Xiaoqi's life had become one of Jun Linyuan's habits, and the last thing Feng Wu wanted was to provide the Crown Prince with more excuses to do so. I'm fine, really, Feng Wu sniveled. She had cried too hard to stop altogether. Sister! Blue veins popped on Feng Xiaoqi's forehead. You're always so proud and you never cry. He must have treated you so horribly for you to cry like this. Feng Wu was embarrassed. She had only been faking it in the beginning. Realizing that he had gone too far, Jun Linyuan took out the abnormal flame bead and waved it around in front of Feng Wu. I thought you wanted this. Yes. Before Feng Wu could reply, Little Phoenix screamed in excitement and nodded its head repeatedly. Yes, it's mine. Once it consumed the abnormal flame bead, Little Phoenix would be able to leave the ring. It had a teleportation skill, which Feng Wu could use as a last resort at a critical moment. Feng Wu was thrilled at that thought. However, she also knew that Jun Linyuan wouldn't make it that easy for her. She knew it in her gut. Your terms. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan, alarmed. Jun Linyuan darted her a contemptuous glance. You were crying so hard and I thought I would just give it to you, but since you're questioning my intentions, you said you would give it to me. Feng Wu jumped at him. However, Jun Linyuan raised his hand and it was beyond Feng Wu's reach. Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu rushed to his side, leaned against him, and reached out with a hand. However, she was too short and Jun Linyuan made sure that she couldn't touch it. Give me. No, I won't. One was eager and the other proud. Both were exceptionally childish. Feng Xiaoqi rubbed his eyes. That wasn't right. Who was this childish wild girl, and what happened to his level-headed sister? Plus, his sister had always kept her distance from the Crown Prince like a mouse evading a cat, but the way they were interacting now, why did it look so strange? At that moment, thump! Jun Linyuan tripped and fell backward on the chaise lounge. Feng Wu pounced on him, trying to snatch the abnormal flame bead away. However, Jun Linyuan raised his hand over his head and stopped Feng Wu with his free hand by wrapping it around her waist. No matter how hard Feng Wu tried, she couldn't get it. Those two. Feng Xiaoqi's mouth fell open. Only seconds ago, his wise sister had been crying her eyes out. But now, she and the Crown Prince looked so intimate. Chapter 400, Is His Royal Highness Asking for a Love Token? Chapter 400, Is His Royal Highness Asking for a Love Token? Looking down, Feng Wu saw her position and she blushed. She quickly shoved Jun Linyuan away and rose to her feet. Embarrassed, she straightened her clothes and was back to the elegant Feng Wu whom the others knew. Jun Linyuan also realized how physically close the two of them had been. He stood up after Feng Wu did and cleared his throat awkwardly. Somehow, Feng Xiaoqi felt that there was more to his sister and the Crown Prince than met the eye. He turned his pleading eyes on Feng. Feng looked straight ahead with a solemn face. Feng Xiaoqi then turned to look at Granny Gong. Granny Gong kept her face undisturbed and serious. Feng Xiaoqi scratched his head. Was he imagining things? Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. You said you would give it to me, but all you're doing is playing with me. You must be having so much fun. Seeing Feng Wu's still swollen eyes, Jun Linyuan felt his heart soften, and he almost handed her the bead. However, he stopped himself at the last moment. Keeping his face impassive, he glanced at Feng Wu. You want it? Let's trade. Sure. With what? Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan's gaze shifted from Feng Wu to Feng Xiaoqi. Feng Wu immediately pulled the bewildered Feng Xiaoqi behind her and glowered at Jun Linyuan. Stop trying to do anything to Xiaoqi. You're not taking him away again. Rubbing his chin, Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu with his bright black eyes and gave her a teasing smile. Little Feng Wu, as a young lady, I'm sure you're good at needlework, right? No, I'm not, Feng Wu said matter-of-factly. Young ladies had to be good at needlework? Says who? Great, Jun Linyuan said arrogantly. I'll trade it with your embroidered pouch. Feng Wu took her pouch off her waistband, pried Jun Linyuan's fingers open, and stuffed it into his palm. There's 10 taels of silver in it. Take them all. Can I have the bead now? Jun Linyuan glanced at the pretty, impeccable embroidered pattern on the pouch and raised an eyebrow. You made this? Feng Wu casually said, No, my mum made it. Jun Linyuan's face darkened a little and he tossed the pouch back to Feng Wu. Keep it. Hey, Feng Wu yelled at Jun Linyuan in frustration. You asked for my pouch, then you tossed it back. What's your problem? Keep acting like this and you'll never get a wife. Jun Linyuan stared back at Feng Wu with his brooding eyes, which made Feng Wu press a hand to her chest and stumble back. With a snort, the crown prince stormed off. A few steps away, Granny Gong, who had kept her face very serious, looked at Feng in surprise. Was His Royal Highness asking for a love token? Feng shrugged. Don't ask me. I can never follow His Royal Highness's twisted logic. After another shrug, Feng followed his young master out. That Jun Linyuan is unbelievable. Gosh, I'm so fed up with him. Resting her hands on her waist, Feng Wu's cheeks puffed up in frustration. Granny Gong cleared her throat in embarrassment. Miss Feng, I think His Royal Highness wants a pouch with your own needlework. Feng Wu was bemused. Why does it matter whose needlework it is? It's still a pouch. Granny Gong was screaming in her head. Her young master was difficult enough, but Miss Feng Wu had no idea what was going on either. How was it ever going to work between the two teenagers? She dropped another hint for Feng Wu. Well, there's a huge difference. Maybe what His Royal Highness wants is a pouch made by Miss Feng yourself. Chapter 401 I'd rather choose Feng Sun. Chapter 401 I'd rather choose Feng Sun. Feng Wu snorted. So, he just won't let me have any peace, will he? Granny Gong was rendered speechless. No, it's not like that. His Royal Highness really likes you. Granny Gong couldn't hold back anymore. She had to tell Feng Wu. Feng Wu was baffled. His Royal Highness? Likes me? Granny Gong, please don't make fun of me. No one is going to believe that. I'm not making fun of you. It's true. His Royal Highness really. Granny Gong decided to help Jun Linyuan out. She was about to be more explicit when a figure showed up at the door. It was Chong San, the captain of Jun Linyuan's guards. Chong San said with a straight face, Miss Wu, His Royal Highness would like you to leave now. Feng Wu was astonished by Granny Gong's words. Jun Linyuan liked her. However, Chong San's words were her wake-up call. Jun Linyuan likes me? Granny Gong, is that how His Royal Highness shows his affection? Please don't say that again. Other people may make a big deal out of it and His Royal Highness's reputation would be tarnished. After giving Granny Gong a long look, Feng Wu stormed off, dragging Feng Xiaoqi along with her. Granny Gong was speechless. Your Royal Highness, I tried, I really did. Taking a deep breath, Granny Gong glared at Chong San. You idiot! What have you done? Chong San was at a loss. What did I do? That was His Royal Highness's order, word for word. Granny Gong was so frustrated. Don't you know what His Royal Highness is like? Why are you doing exactly the same thing? You could have translated those words for His Royal Highness. It's late and it's foggy outside, so you'll escort Miss Feng back home for her safety. Couldn't you put it that way? Chong San asked, Is that really necessary? Yes. Yes, of course. Granny Gong gritted her teeth and stressed each word. Feng Xiaoqi and Feng Xiaoqi were on their way back. Luckily, Feng Wu hadn't visited the Crown Prince's residence for nothing. At least she had gotten Feng Xiaoqi back. Feng Xiaoqi had remained in that bewildered state since earlier, and all he could think of now was his dauntless sister straddling the Crown Prince. Looking up, Feng Xiaoqi saw his sister marching ahead in frustration, and he felt uneasy. His sister had always been so composed, and he could only recall a handful of occasions when she lost her temper. But she had never been as angry as she was now. Could it be that his sister was? As someone with a big sister complex, Feng Xiaoqi wouldn't let that happen. Sister, Feng Xiaoqi hesitated. What? Feng Wu was beating Jun Linyuan up in her head when Feng Xiaoqi's voice woke her up from her reverie. Holding Feng Wu's hand, Feng Xiaoqi asked gingerly, The Crown Prince is a bad guy, isn't he? Of course. Feng Wu said firmly. Feng Xiaoqi then asked, So, sister, you won't fall in love with him, will you? Feng Wu smirked. Him? I'd rather fall in love with Feng Sun. Phew. Feng Xiaoqi was elated by his sister's pronouncement, and they went back home happily, hand in hand. Neither of them noticed that in a dark corner a few steps away, a pair of pupils contracted at Feng Wu's words. Blue veins popped on his forehead and his face turned livid. That was just great. He clenched his fists. Northern Feng Mansion. Feng Sun was reclining in a rocking chair and feeding an azure-eyed cat. Get your ass out here! A sudden roar stirred the entire mansion like a clap of thunder. Feng Sun, what? Chapter 402. I want to marry Feng Lu. Chapter 402. I want to marry Feng Lu. The entire Northern Feng Mansion was shocked. Who was that? Northern Feng General was stationed at the northern border, but his wife lived in the mansion. She shuddered at that sound. Sister-in-law. Mrs. Ning, who had just arrived at Northern Feng Mansion, was also frightened. Ning Chensi had been so eager to get to the imperial capital so that he could propose a marriage to the Feng family. He feared that Feng Wu would become someone else's wife if they didn't travel fast enough. He had been urging Mrs. Ning on the entire time until they arrived at the imperial capital. My lady, the voice came from the young lord's courtyard. Granny Tao, Lady Northern Feng's personal maid, saw that both ladies were frightened and explained to them in a hurry, It's His Royal Highness. Lady Northern Feng let out a breath of relief when she heard that name. Taking Mrs. Ning's hand, she smiled. Sister-in-law, don't worry. His Royal Highness grew up with A Sun and they're best friends. Everything's fine. Mrs. Ning patted her chest. I thought my heart was going to jump out of my throat. I'm so relieved to hear that it was only His Royal Highness. I met him on our way back and he helped us out. Really? Lady Northern Feng hadn't been told, and she asked about what happened. Mrs. Ning's main purpose here was to get Ning Chensi his bride. Hence, she told the lady everything in detail and concluded with a smile, The Feng family has an amazing daughter. Not only is she a great doctor, she's exceptionally beautiful as well. A great doctor and a beauty? Feng Wu's name came to Lady Northern Feng right away. Lady Northern Feng found Feng Wu very impressive. She had liked the girl since she was little and had always wanted her as a daughter. And her affection for Feng Wu had only increased when Feng Wu grew up. However, the kid was without cultivation now and anybody could pick on her if they chose to. Lady Northern Fong had been very displeased with what happened at the birthday banquet earlier today. She had been about to step out to defend Feng Wu, but one thing led to another, and before she realized it, the Yen family was having the worst day of their lives. Mrs. Yen was the eldest sister of Northern Fong General, and Lady Northern Fong had had to help out. After everything was finally settled, Feng Wu was long gone. "Sister-in-law, what do you think?" Mrs. Ning asked for Lady Northern Feng's opinion. "Pardon?" Lady Northern Fong had wandered off. "You were saying, I'm going to propose marriage to the Fong family, and ask for the hand of their sixth daughter for Ning Chensi. Sister-in-law, we would like to have you as the go-between." Mrs. Ning smiled. "What?" Lady Northern Fong was astonished. "Feng Lu." "That's right, the sixth daughter of the Fong family," Mrs. Ning confirmed. "I mean," Lady Northern Fong found it hard to believe. "Sister-in-law, are you sure you want the sixth daughter, not the fifth?" "Of course. It's Miss Lu we want. Had it not been for her, I wouldn't have been able to give birth to my twins and all three of us would be dead now." Mrs. Ning was very earnest. Lady Northern Fong rubbed her forehead. She had thought it would be Feng Wu. So, it was Feng Lu? "If it's Feng Lu you want, I would advise against it." Lady Northern Fong waved her hand. "Why?" Mrs. Ning's eyes widened. "Because she's a vicious girl. Having a daughter-in-law like that will only ruin the peace of your family. You wouldn't be getting a daughter-in-law, but a disaster." Chapter 403, I'm Challenging You. Chapter 403, I'm Challenging You. Lady Northern Fong held nothing back. "If you ask for my opinion, I absolutely disagree with your choice of daughter-in-law. Aunt." Just then, a figure rushed in and dropped to his knees in front of Mrs. Ning. It was a teenager with delicate features, and he kept his back ramrod straight. "Chensi you. Aunt, please grant me my wish," Ning Chensi pleaded. "It was love at first sight. Aunt, I want no one but Feng Lu as my wife." Lady Northern Fong stared at Ning Chensi in astonishment. What was wrong with this stupid kid? He wanted no one but Feng Lu? Had he lost his mind? Lady Northern Fong took a deep breath. "Stand up. You're being silly." "I won't, unless you make a promise." Ning Chensi looked Lady Northern Fong in the eye. Lady Northern Fong almost choked. Exactly how blind was this kid to fall in love with Feng Lu at first sight and want no one but her? "You idiot!" Lady Northern Fong had always been irascible and she couldn't fight back her anger anymore. Rising to her feet, she pointed at Ning Chensi and reprimanded him. "Do you have any idea what kind of a girl Feng Lu is? You want no one but her? Do you have any idea what a shameful thing she did in the Yen Manor today?" Mrs. Ning frowned a little. "Sister-in-law, what happened to Miss Fong?" "What happened?" Lady Northern Fong snorted. "She's quite the piece of work. She ganged up with Yen Yen and tried to do harm to Feng Wu and Lady Tang. But Feng Wu was too smart to fall victim to their plot. Not only did she come out unscathed, she made them reap what they had sown." Mrs. Ning and Ning Chensi exchanged looks. That didn't sound right at all. "Miss Feng Lu is beautiful and brilliant and she'd never do something like that." Ning Chensi glared at Lady Northern Fong. "Aunt, please don't slander Miss Feng Lu just because you're trying to stop me." Lady Northern Fong was baffled and she almost passed out from her rage. You're an idiot." Mrs. Ning didn't look too happy herself. "Sister-in-law, Miss Feng Lu is a smart and pretty young lady and I know she's very level-headed. There must be some misunderstanding here." Lady Northern Fong snapped. "There is no misunderstanding. Feng Lu is abominable. Don't be fooled by her pretty face. Come to think of it, little Wu was the best. Too bad that she wouldn't marry Feng Sun." While Lady Northern Fong was arguing with her guests, Feng Sun was having troubles of his own. With that angry roar, Jun Linyuan showed up in midair. Feng Sun, who had been caressing the cat, was dumbfounded. However, once he saw that it was Jun Linyuan, he ran out, still holding the cat, and shouted in excitement. "Boss Jun, what's up? Incoming enemies?" After that, Feng Sun dropped the cat, rolled up his sleeves, and was combat ready. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. "Where are they? Where are they?" Feng Sun's eyes darted around, but he didn't see anyone. In the end, he turned to Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Only then did he notice Boss Jun's stunning but livid face. The air he gave off was so cold that Feng Sun shuddered inwardly. "Be Boss Jun." An ominous feeling came over Feng Sun, and he called out to Jun Linyuan gingerly. Glaring at Feng Sun, Jun Linyuan gritted his teeth and his eyes spat fire. "Feng Sun! What? Draw your sword! What? I'm challenging you!" The Crown Prince pointed the tip of his sword at Feng Sun. Chapter 404 Draw Your Sword. Chapter 404 Draw Your Sword. What? Feng Sun was dumbfounded. Challenge? From Boss Jun? What was this all about? Draw your sword! Driven mad with jealousy, Boss Jun glared at Feng Sun. "Be Boss Jun, what's this about? Challenge me? 10 of me put together wouldn't be able to stand a single strike from you. What kind of challenge is this?" Feng Sun was almost in tears. What was happening? "Strike!" the Crown Prince shouted angrily. "I won't! Do it!" "No!" Feng Sun stuck out his chest and resisted as best as he could. "You were born into a better family than I was, you're more handsome, smarter, and you're much more capable than I am. I'm inferior to you in every possible way. And you're challenging me? You're humiliating me on purpose, aren't you? You have no heart." The more Feng Sun said, the sadder he became. He felt so miserable that he almost burst into tears. However, his buddy paid no attention to his complaints and spared no effort in this challenge. Poor Feng Sun. He was bruised all over after Jun Linyuan was done. Jun Linyuan pointed at Feng Sun. "Stay away from you-know-who." He promptly left after that. Feng Sun stood there, utterly baffled, and he had the most innocent look on his swollen, bruised face. "Stay away from I-know-who. Who's that supposed to be?" "Boss Jun, who are you talking about?" "The Feng Manor." Feng Wu took Feng Xiaoqi back home. She had been gone the whole day, and when she still wasn't back after dark, everyone in Fallen Star Yard was flustered. Seeing Uncle Chiu come back, Granny Zhao hurried toward him. "Anything? Have you seen Miss Wu anywhere?" Uncle Chiu's haggard face was ridden with anxiety. "I searched every inch of the way from here to the Yen Manor, and Miss Wu is nowhere to be found. How about you? Heard anything from the others?" Granny Zhao was as agitated as ants on a hot pan. "I asked everyone and searched every corner of the manor. She's not here." Uncle Chiu was exasperated. "What about Lady Wang? What did she say? Didn't she take Miss Wu out with her? Did she have anything to say about Miss Wu being missing?" Tears welled up in Granny Zhao's eyes. "Lady Wang and the master had a huge row after they came back, and it's like a circus on that side of the manor now. No one would tell me anything. When I pressed, they told me that Miss Wu left before they did, and they had no idea where she was." "Where's Qiuling?" asked Uncle Chiu. Qiuling wouldn't believe them and went to question them again. "It's been over an hour since she left. Is she going to be all right?" Disasters were piling up one after another, and Granny Zhao thought she was going to have a heart attack. Just then, Feng Wu jumped over the wall into the courtyard with Feng Xiaoqi behind her. "Miss Wu!" Granny Zhao turned around at the noise, and she cried out in pleasant surprise when she saw Feng Wu. Granny Zhao rushed to Feng Wu's side, held her hands, and burst into tears. "Miss, are you all right? Are you hurt?" Uncle Chiu came up to them anxiously as well, his eyes fixed on Feng Wu the whole time. Feng Wu was bemused. "I'm fine. What's going on? Oh, I brought Xiaoqi back." Young Master Qi! Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao cried out in surprise when they noticed Feng Xiaoqi. Young Master! You're back! Granny Zhao couldn't stop crying. A moment ago they thought Miss Wu was in danger, but now their mistress had come back, unscratched. And she had brought young Master Qi back with her. They were so thrilled. Where's Mum? Feng Wu asked. Granny Zhao said, My lady was so worried about you, and she couldn't stop crying. You know she's prone to throwing up when she cries. We only just put her to bed. She'll cry and throw up again if she wakes up and you're not here. Chapter 405 Luckily, Xiaoqi is a naive boy. Chapter 405 Luckily, Xiaoqi is a naive boy. They were still talking when they heard rustling sounds inside. Feng Wu's beautiful mother then dashed out. Xiao Wu. Seeing Feng Wu, the beautiful lady threw herself into her daughter's arms and wouldn't let go. She was trembling so violently that her slim figure reminded one of a butterfly on a winter day. She looked so frightened. Patting her mother gently on the back, Feng Wu comforted her in a soft voice. There. I'm back, aren't I? Sob. The beautiful lady sobbed uncontrollably and her trembling hands wouldn't let go of Feng Wu's clothes. Xiao Wu. Don't leave me behind, Xiao Wu. No, of course not. Xiao Wu is right here with you. Feng Wu consoled her mother patiently. No one knew what the beautiful lady had gone through, but when Feng Wu's dad, who had long disappeared, brought her mother home back then, the beautiful lady had the intelligence of a 5-year-old. Thanks to Feng Wu's protection all these years, her mother was able to stay innocent and unharmed. The beautiful lady still hadn't recovered from the fright, and she wouldn't let go of Feng Wu no matter what. Mum, look, Feng Wu gestured at the person behind them. Mum, Feng Xiaoqi ran to their side and waved at his mother. However, the beautiful lady only gave Feng Xiaoqi a slight nod. Xiaoqi, you're back. She turned back to Feng Wu immediately and went on weeping. Xiao Wu, my sweetest Xiao Wu. Don't leave me like that again, okay? Feng Wu comforted her patiently. Don't you feel hurt? Someone spoke next to Feng Xiaoqi. Feng Xiaoqi looked up and saw that it was someone they had met in northern border city before. Brother Yu Minji. Feng Xiaoqi, the naive kid, didn't find Yu Minji showing up here at this late hour out of the ordinary at all. He only asked offhandedly, Why should I feel hurt? Yu Minji was surprised. Aren't you sad that your mother prefers your sister over you? Feng Xiaoqi was bewildered. What's wrong with that? Of course my sister deserves more attention. Why should I feel sad about that? Because that's not normal. All other families value their sons over their daughters. Yu Minji looked at Feng Xiaoqi sympathetically. Exactly what had they taught this boy? As his sister's ultimate supporter, Feng Xiaoqi was offended and he said indignantly, My sister is always right and we must do everything she says. Of course everyone loves her. Yu Minji was taken aback by that matter-of-fact statement. Feng Wu finally noticed Yu Minji and she stared at him in an intimidating manner. What do you think you're teaching my brother? Nothing. It's nothing. Yu Minji waved his hands hastily. Says you. The boy pointed a finger at Yu Minji angrily, then turned to his sister. Sister, he said that Mum likes only you and not me. He also said that our family prefers girls over boys. Yu Minji felt like crying. He was just being nosy and it was some harmless small talk. Why was this kid being so serious? Feng Wu stared at Yu Minji with eyes devoid of warmth. It was quite frightening. Yu Minji stumbled back. I was just chatting. And that was the first topic that came to mind? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Luckily, Xiaoqi was a naive kid. Anyone more sensitive would have been persuaded. Yu Minji felt his knees buckle under Feng Wu's glare. What are you doing here? Feng Wu frowned. Chapter 406. He will protect his sister. Chapter 406. He will protect his sister. Minji cheered up after giving Feng Wu another look. Little Feng Wu, you know what? He moved closer as he spoke. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at him. What? Ha 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 ha, Minji guffawed. I made a deal with my family and I'll be staying in the imperial capital from now on. You can come to me for anything. I'll always be on your side. Feng Wu was intrigued. People from your family can walk around in public just like that. Why can't we? Minji looked back at Feng Wu in confusion. Aren't you from the Dark Court? I thought the royal family would come after you the moment you show your face. Feng Wu was bewildered. Minji pursed his lips. That was before. Things are different now. Different how? You want to know? I'm not going to ask you. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. She wasn't going to play along. Come with me if you want to know. Minji tried to take Feng Wu's hand. I'll tell you if you keep me company. Feng Wu was reminded of the things she had to put up with at Junli Nguyen's place, and she flared up. Glaring at Minji, she bellowed, Does everyone think that they're the ruler of the world now? And you think you can just order me around like that? In your dreams. A hush fell over the courtyard after Feng Wu blurted out those words. Everyone looked at Feng Wu in amazement. What was wrong? Minji looked at Feng Wu timidly and said in a pitiful voice, I didn't try to make you come with me. You didn't have to yell at me. He was a very good-looking teenager, and when he went all puppy dog eyes like this, he looked adorable. Feng Wu realized that she was venting her anger on the wrong person after she lashed out. Rubbing her forehead, she said, I'm sorry. That wasn't meant for you. Who was this for, then? Minji asked curiously, his eyes sparkling. Feng Wu ignored him. She turned to Granny Zhao and asked, Where's Qiuling? Why isn't she here? Granny Zhao had been meaning to tell Feng Wu the news and she said in a hurry, Miss, we thought you were in some sort of trouble and Qiuling went to Lady Wang to ask for information, but she's been gone for too long. Shall I go get her? Recalling the humiliation which her uncle and aunt suffered at the Yen Manor, Feng Wu's face darkened a little. She waved at Granny Zhao. I'll go get her myself. Sister, I'm coming with you. Holding Feng Wu's hand, Feng Xiaoqi looked up at his sister, his tone insistent. He was going to protect his sister. Feng Wu nodded. Uncle doesn't know you're back yet and we need to tell him anyway. Let's go. I'm going with you. Minji tried to take Feng Wu's free hand. Feng Wu cast a stern look at Minji and he drew back his hand awkwardly. However, he insisted. I'll keep you company. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Keep me company? Who are you to me? So, I can go if I'm somebody to you? An idea struck Minji. His eyes twinkled. Was little Feng Wu suggesting something? Was the girl asking for a marriage proposal? At that idea, Minji felt warmth run down his spine and everything seemed to light up in front of him. Feng Wu shook her head in resignation. I don't want to talk to you. Just go back home. The look in Minji's eyes gave Feng Wu the creeps and she reminded him, It's late. You really should leave now. After that, Feng Wu took Xiaoqi's hand and hurried off toward Flying Snow Building. Chapter 407 Feng sang. Chapter 407 Feng sang. However, Minji was a little concerned, for little Feng Wu didn't have any cultivation and his family would never let him marry such a girl. Take her as a concubine? Somehow, Minji knew in his heart that the moment he said that to her, little Feng Wu would slap him until he was dead. Such a dilemma. Feng Wu had no idea what the silly teenager was thinking about as she made her way to Flying Snow Building with Feng Xiaoqi. It was very quiet outside Flying Snow Building. All the servants held their breaths and were as quiet as cicadas in late autumn. Quarreling voices came from inside the building. Feng Wu recognized the voices of Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang. So much for their supposedly steadfast love. Feng Wu smirked a little. Miss Wu. Seeing Feng Wu arrive with the boy, Granny Gui, who had been guarding the entrance, raised her voice all of a sudden. The quarreling voices subsided right away. Glancing at Lady Wang's most loyal granny with a half-smile, Feng Wu led Feng Xiaoqi into the building with a devil-may-care attitude. It was quite the scene in Flying Snow Building. Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang were there as expected, as were Feng Yiran and Feng Lu. There was a fifth person, whom Feng Wu recognized right away. She was the third daughter of the family. Lady Wang had 4 daughters in total. The first 2 had been married off. The third one was the most talented and had been sent to Imperial College. Right now, she stood there, eyeing Feng Wu with contempt. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look at Feng Wu when she walked in. Feng Wu wasn't intimidated by all the gazes at all. Leading Feng Xiaoqi to her uncle, she told her brother, "Xiaoqi, this is our eldest uncle." Feng Xiaoqi greeted Feng Yanfeng politely with a bow. A million things came back to Feng Yanfeng when he saw Feng Wu's face. Blue veins popped in the corner of his forehead when he recalled what happened earlier at the banquet in the Yan Manor. "Feng Wu, how dare you come here now?" Feng Yanfeng didn't even bother to look at Feng Xiaoqi, for in his eyes, as a level 1 spiritual master, Feng Xiaoqi was as useless as Feng Wu herself. He glared at Feng Wu. "You ungrateful, malicious girl. Are you trying to destroy the Feng clan? How could you turn against your family? You don't deserve to be a daughter of this clan." Feng Yanfeng screamed at Feng Wu, venting his rage. Lady Wang was the one he had been screaming at earlier. Once Feng Yanfeng learned that Sir Yan had eliminated him from the candidate list for that position he had been longing for, he rushed back home and roared at Lady Wang, blaming her for bringing up such an unruly daughter. Lady Wang and Feng Lu had both been shouted at, and both had red slap marks on their cheeks. That was how mad Feng Yanfeng was. Seeing that Feng Yanfeng had turned his rage on Feng Wu, Lady Wang and Feng Lu exchanged looks, and both saw satisfaction in each other's eyes. Holding Feng Xiaoqi's hand, Feng Wu stood ramrod straight. She gave Feng Yanfeng a contemptuous snort. "Uncle, what are you talking about? I tried to destroy the Feng clan? Enlighten me then. What did I do? Do I need to remind you what you did?" Feng Yanfeng was almost too infuriated to stand still. "Do you know how hard I tried to get that position in the Ministry of Official Personnel? If I can become the assistant minister, our clan will rise again. But thanks to you, all is lost." Chapter 408 The Unbridled Feng Sang. Chapter 408 The Unbridled Feng Sang. Feng Yanfeng looked very frightening when he was enraged. Lady Wang and her children kept their silence, as did the maids and grannies. However, Feng Wu was completely unaffected and she responded with a smirk on her face. "Uncle, are you sure I'm the one to blame?" Feng Yanfeng stared at Feng Wu. "Stop making up excuses." Sensing Feng Yanfeng's hostility, Feng Xiaoqi clenched his fists and shouted at Feng Yanfeng. "Don't you dare pick on my sister." His childish voice and behavior warmed Feng Wu's heart. Rubbing Feng Xiaoqi's head, Feng Wu smiled. "Xiaoqi, don't worry. The only picking on you'll see is me doing it to other people." "Tch," Feng Sang, who had been standing in the corner, snorted. She didn't try to hide her contempt for Feng Wu at all. Hearing Feng Wu's comment, Feng Yanfeng fumed with rage. "Feng Wu, after everything that's happened, your only choice is to repent." "For what?" Feng Wu said indifferently. "Admit your mistake." "What did I do?" Feng Wu smirked. "Uncle, you were there at the Yan Manor yourself and you saw everything. Feng Lu and Yan tried to set me up and all I did was deal with them as they tried to do to me. What was wrong with that?" "Of course it was your fault." Lady Wang glowered at Feng Wu. "Fine, we admit that Feng Lu started it, but with what happened, shouldn't you try to cover it up like a big sister should? But what did you do? Instead of covering for her, you let it out and made such a big scene out of it. There's no taking it back now and you've ruined Feng Lu's reputation." People will be talking about her behind her back. You're the one to blame if she can't find a good husband. Feng Wu found these people extremely unreasonable. She gave Lady Wang a half-smile. So, Aunt, are you saying that even though I was the victim, under the circumstances, I should take the blame and call that for the greater good? Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang were rendered speechless. Feng Lu stepped out, clenching her fists. Wasn't that what you were supposed to do? Feng Wu, you were brought up by the clan and you should be grateful for that. Why couldn't you bear that petty a grievance? Feng Yanfeng glared at Feng Wu. Exactly. Why couldn't she swallow it for the Feng clan? Feng Wu smiled. My dear sister, if you love the clan that much, why did you ruin our reputation and your father's career? You should be able to sacrifice yourself for the clan and endure that petty a grievance, shouldn't you? Those were Feng Lu's own words. Feng Lu was furious, but she couldn't think of anything to say in retort. Clap, clap, clap. Feng Sang, who had been standing in a corner, walked out, clapping her hands. She stopped in front of Feng Wu and looked down at her. There was something lofty and arrogant in her eyes when she looked at Feng Wu. Rather than seeing a person, Feng Sang looked like she was evaluating a commodity. Feng Wu, I didn't expect that you would continue to be this arrogant after losing your ability. That's actually quite impressive. Feng Sang stared at Feng Wu. But, I think I have a duty to inform you that in this world that values martial prowess above all else, you need more than words. On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Feng Sang was very unbridled. Feng Wu could more or less tell what Feng Sang's cultivation level was. As a newly admitted student to Imperial College, Feng Sang was a level 1 spiritual grandmaster. Chapter 409 How dare these people bully Xiao Wu like this? Chapter 409 How dare these people bully Xiao Wu like this? Feng Wu was a level 9 spiritual master at the moment. The difference in their capabilities wasn't that significant and Feng Wu was confident that she could defeat Feng Sang in an instant. Hence, she gave Feng Sang a half-smile. So, what do you think I should do, my dear sister? After how rude and defiant you were toward my parents, Feng Wu, you deserve this. With that, Feng Sang raised a hand to slap Feng Wu. Imperial College had indeed taught her well. Her strike was quick, accurate, and effective. Feng Wu also saw something glinting between Feng Sang's fingers. Sister! Feng Xiaoqi opened his eyes wide and cried out. Smack! There came the crisp sound of a slap. However, the looks on the faces of Lady Wang and the rest were replaced with astonishment. How dare you bully Xiao Wu like this? Yu Mingwei slapped Feng Sang so hard that she spun around on the spot. So, that crisp sound was from Yu Mingji slapping Feng Sang, not Feng Sang slapping Feng Wu. For a moment all was quiet. Lady Wang was the first to cry out. Who are you? Feng Wu, who is this man? Yu Mingji was so intimidating that Feng Yangfeng and his family were all shaken. However, Lady Wang's concern for her daughter overpowered her fear, and she was the first to rush to Feng Sang's side. Feng Sang had a wild and unyielding air about her. She stared at Yu Mingji with a vicious look in her eyes, as if she was going to tear him to pieces. He had slapped her. No one had treated her like that before. One more look and I'll squeeze your eyeballs out. Yu Mingji might be a lamb in front of Feng Wu, but he wouldn't restrain himself one bit around anyone else. After all, he was Yu Mingji, the teenager as famous as Jun Linyuan. Feng Sang snorted. Listen to that arrogant voice. Feng Wu, is that your lover? I didn't know one could get a lover at your age, you slut. Smack! Before Feng Wu could react, Yu Mingji slapped Feng Sang once more. He was pretty happy to be called Feng Wu's lover, but calling Feng Wu a slut was the worst choice Feng Sang made today. Yu Mingji would never allow anyone to insult Feng Wu like that. Hence, he slapped her. How can you hit a woman? Feng Yiran had met Yu Mingji before, but he didn't know who the latter was. Since his own younger sister was being beaten up, Feng Yiran had no choice but to step out. Yuminji smirked. Why can't I hit a woman? With what she said, she deserves more than 2 slaps. Well, it's your turn now. Feng Wu could kick Yumingwei around and he would take it with pleasure. However, to everyone else, he was the sacred son of the Dark Court, and Feng Yiran was nothing in comparison. Feng Yanfeng was furious. Did everyone think that they could do whatever they wanted to the Feng clan just because they weren't what they used to be? He wouldn't let this random teenager have his way. Feng Yiran, take care of him. Poor Feng Yanfeng. He had no idea that the defiant teenager was Yuminji, whose capability was second only to Jun Linyuan. He shouted his command at his son. Feng Yiran cast a stern look at Feng Wu before turning to Yuminji. Well, how about we go outside? Outside? Everyone here had picked on his Xiao Wu, and Yuminji was just going to kick Feng Yiran's ass. Yuminji's fist was in Feng Yiran's face before the latter could finish his sentence. Feng Yiran's eyes widened in fear. Chapter 410 KO. Chapter 410 KO. Yuminji struck. Thump, thump, thump. As someone who was almost as famous as Jun Linyuan, Yuminji was anything but weak. And Feng Yiran? He was a mere novice spiritual grandmaster. Therefore, it was more like a slaughter than a fight. Thump, thump, thump. Feng Yiran kept falling back as Yuminji closed in. Moreover, Yuminji had the habit of aiming at his opponent's face. Every strike of his landed on Feng Yiran's face. Slap, slap, slap. The crisp sounds resonated in the room. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Hadn't Yuminji left? What was he doing here? Her plan was to gather some experience in real combat here so as to raise herself to the spiritual grandmaster stage. It seemed that she had been deprived of that opportunity. Thud! Yuminji slapped Feng Yiran hard in the face and the latter flew backward. Ran air! Lady Wang was astonished. She had always thought that Feng Yiran was more talented than any other young man of his age. However, her son had just suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Yuminji, a teenager that looked younger than Feng Yiran. Feng Yiran didn't even have a chance to strike back. Ran air! Seeing Feng Yiran's swollen face, Lady Wang was so agitated that she almost passed out. Looking up, she glared at Feng Wu and hurled a stream of curses at her. Feng Wu, who the hell is this man? Are you shagging him? You slut! Had the target of Lady Wang's invectives been Yuminji, he wouldn't have given it another thought, for he was insensitive like that. However, insulting Feng Wu was a different story. You better leave now. Yuminji pushed Feng Wu toward the door. He was too strong for Feng Wu to resist. Yuminji, what are you doing? Feng Wu tried to talk to him over her shoulder, but Yuminji had put a hand on her head to stop her from turning around. Yuminji sounded excited. Little Feng Wu, you owe me one. After that, Yuminji shut the door behind her. Inside were Feng Yanfeng, Lady Wang, Feng Yiran, Feng Sang, and Feng Lu. All the maids, grannies, and other servants stayed outside. Granny Gui smirked at Feng Wu. Her little love was so dead. Keeping her head lowered, Granny Gui slowly backed away with a vicious smile on her face. She turned around and began to run when she reached the entrance. She had to inform the old lady about Feng Wu's little lover. Such a shameless girl had to be banished from the clan. Thud! Feng Wu grabbed a vase in the corridor and smashed it down on the back of Granny Gui's head. Thump! There was a loud sound. Hit by the vase, Granny Gui turned around, swaying, and stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. How dare this girl attack her? Feng Wu's move intimidated all the servants who worked for this branch of the clan. She was so tough. Feng Wu smiled a little. Did these people really think they could do whatever they wanted to her? She would show them what she was capable of. Blood covered Granny Gui's head, which looked quite frightening. Behind the closed door, they could hear everything banging into everything else. About 5 minutes later, the door opened. Yuminji opened it himself. Looking up, Feng Wu saw a neatly dressed teenager with a face glowing in satisfaction. She then looked behind him into the room. Feng Wu was speechless. Everyone inside was on the floor. Feng Yanfeng, Lady Wang, Feng Yiran, Feng Sang, and Feng Lu. Every face was bruised and no one was standing. Chapter 411, So Mad. Chapter 411, So Mad. When Feng Wu looked into the room, everyone inside looked back at her. Especially Feng Yanfeng, whose face alternated between red and green. He looked as furious as he was frightened. It was beyond description. Feng Wu also noticed that aside from the people scattered all over the floor, the inside of Flying Snow Building had been torn apart by Yuminji. Nothing was intact and it looked as if a robbery had taken place. Feng Wu was speechless. She finally saw how evil and defiant the sacred sun could be. She had always thought that Yuminji was a lamb. But now, she saw that the teenager had been humoring her. Just then, Yuminji gave a wave of his hand. Crunch. Screech. The entire Flying Snow Building swayed from side to side, teetered, then, "Run!" Feng Yanfeng screeched. He then dashed out like a shooting arrow. Despite the pain all over their bodies, Feng Yiran and the others stumbled toward the door as well. Finally, they were able to make it out, just as Flying Snow Building crumbled. Rumble! Flying Snow Building collapsed with a loud bang. Feng Wu stared at Yuminji with an open mouth. A lot of servants had gathered outside when Feng Yanfeng and his family ran out. Even Granny Gui, who had been hit on the head with a vase by Feng Wu, watched this in utter astonishment. The entire family was badly battered and looked miserable. All eyes were on Feng Wu. Who on earth was this teenager Miss Wu had brought back? Who are you? Tell me your name. With eyes as swollen as walnuts, Feng Lu screamed at Yuminji. Yuminji was going to answer, but was stopped by the look Feng Wu gave him. He cleared his throat. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, touch Xiao Wu again and I'll skin you people alive. Xiao Wu, let's go. Wrapping an arm around Feng Wu's shoulders, Yuminji led Feng Wu out of the courtyard. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. But she still let Yuminji keep his arm around her shoulders, for right now she needed Yuminji's power. She wouldn't need it if Yuminji hadn't done what he had done. However, now that she had publicly fallen out with Feng Yanfeng, she didn't have any choice. She wasn't powerful enough to withstand the revenge of that family yet. Feng Wu glared at Yuminji as soon as they were outside. Yuminji's stomach lurched at Feng Wu's angry gaze. What was wrong? Feng Wu was genuinely angry. She pointed a finger at Yuminji. How could you do that? I was only helping you. Yuminji had no idea what damage he had caused. He thought he was doing the right thing. Feng Wu took a deep breath. It wasn't enough to suppress her anger. She stepped on Yuminji's foot hard, then took Feng Xiaoqi's hand and turned to leave. Hey, wait! Little Feng Wu, wait! Yuminji was upset as well. I helped you. How can you do this to me? Do you even have a heart? Help me? Thanks so much for that help. Feng Wu glared at Yuminji. You had so much fun kicking asses and tearing down a building. You can leave here without looking back after that, but what about me? If they dare bully you... Feng Wu snorted. A stab in the back is much more difficult to guard against than an open gunshot. I still live in this manner. How long do you think it'll take for them to get back at me? Feng Wu hadn't reached the spiritual grandmaster stage, and she wasn't powerful enough. She had planned to continue pretending to be polite around Feng Yanfeng for a while yet. Not to mention... Chapter 412, Those People Are So Cruel. Chapter 412, Those People Are So Cruel. Lady Wang, Feng Yuan, Feng Lu, all of these people had had something to do with her losing her cultivation back then, which meant that they had all partially contributed to what happened to her master. Feng Wu wasn't sure about Feng Yanfeng's participation, but he couldn't have been innocent. Hence, Feng Wu had been planning to get her revenge discreetly. What Yu Minji did was a temporary catharsis, but what about the aftermath? Luckily, Yu Minji didn't tell them his name and Feng Wu was able to use his existence as leverage. Otherwise, one word of the Dark Court and Feng Yanfeng would be the first to report Yu Minji to the authorities. Yu Minji scratched his head. Feng Xiaoqi had been thrilled to see Yu Minji beat the hell out of his uncle's family. The boy had flushed with excitement and almost applauded Yu Minji loudly. But his sister was very upset at the moment. Although he had no idea what had set his sister off, he would never question her. His sister's enemy was as good as his own, and he would always share her hatred. Hence, Feng Xiaoqi ran up to Yu Minji and stomped on the latter's foot. Ow! Yu Minji hadn't been paying attention to the boy, and he cried out in pain at the sudden attack. Feng Xiaoqi threw a dirty look at Yu Minji the same way his sister did before running back to Feng Wu and taking her hand. Yu Minji was left baffled on the spot. Little Feng Wu. Yu Minji ground his teeth. You ungrateful girl. What about my dignity? Feng Wu had already left with Feng Xiaoqi. Feng Wu smacked her forehead all of a sudden. Damn it. She forgot about Qiuling again. Qiuling had gone to Flying Snow Building to ask about Feng Wu's whereabouts and hadn't come back. Feng Wu was sure that Lady Wang must have locked her up. Feng Wu was going to let Feng Xiaoqi go back first, so that she could go fetch Qiuling herself. Just then, Miss, a voice came from afar. Feng Wu looked up and saw a barefoot teenage girl hobbling toward them. Qiuling! Feng Wu reached out to steady Qiuling. However, Qiuling cried out in pain and burst into tears at Feng Wu's touch. Cold sweat covered her face. Feng Wu knew right away that Qiuling had been stabbed by needles. Carrying Qiuling on her back, Feng Wu hurried back toward Fallen Star Yard. Miss, I can't let you do this. Please put me down. Qiuling was almost in tears. Masters and servants were of different classes and mistresses were supposed to be carried by their maids, not the other way round. Qiuling couldn't believe what was going on. Don't move! Feng Wu raised her voice. Feng Wu could be very intimidating when she wanted to, and Qiuling was in so much pain. She replied in a tiny voice and stopped resisting, although her body was still rigid. Fallen Star Yard. Seeing Feng Wu carry Qiuling back, Granny Zhao rushed out to greet them and took Qiuling from her. Qiuling was ghastly pale and only half conscious by now. Granny Zhao asked anxiously, What happened? What's wrong with Qiuling? Granny Zhao, we need some hot water. Feng Wu didn't explain, for she knew that Granny Zhao would know as soon as she took off Qiuling's clothes. And she was right. Granny Zhao saw the marks on Qiuling's skin when she was about to clean the latter with a hot towel, and she burst into tears. Those people! Granny Zhao couldn't stop her tears. Who could have done this? Qiuling is just a maid. How can they be so cruel? Why did they do this? Feng Wu gritted her teeth. Because... Chapter 413, The Spiritual Grandmaster Stage. Chapter 413, The Spiritual Grandmaster Stage. Because of me. There was anger and self-derision in Feng Wu's impassive voice. Miss Wu, Granny Zhao wanted to say something. However, Feng Wu stopped Granny Zhao with a wave of her hand. Clean Qiuling with a hot towel, then put this ointment on her. She then turned to leave. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi took Feng Wu's hand. Sister, where are you going? Don't worry, I won't lose control. Feng Wu sat down on the threshold and let Feng Xiaoqi sit next to her. Looking up, she realized that the silver moon was wrapped in thick cloud layers and the sky was pitch black. Feng Wu recalled the densely packed needle marks on Qiuling's fair skin. The wounds were bloody and the needles used had been very thick. Moreover, Feng Wu noticed that they weren't clean at all. They wanted Qiuling dead. Those people. They'd lost their minds. She had to get stronger. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Otherwise, she could only watch as everyone she cared about got hurt. It was Qiuling this time, but soon it could be Granny Zhao, Feng Xiaoqi, her beautiful mother, or even herself. She could stand the physical pain, but what if someone was killed? What they had done to Qiuling could have killed her. At that thought, Feng Wu clenched her fists so hard that her fingernails dug into her palms. As for Yuminji, he had been unjustly blamed. Just then, Feng Wu felt the divine blood of the phoenix between her eyebrows stir violently, and she heard a phoenix utter a long and loud cry in her head. Wait! Feng Wu's eyes lit up in pleasant surprise. There was no time to think. Feng Wu crossed her legs and switched to her cultivation mode right away. Feng Xiaoqi, the bright boy, realized what was going on immediately. His sister had had an epiphany. He closed the gate of Fallen Star Yard in a hurry, then took out a dagger and stood there to guard his sister. Uncle Chiu came out at the noise, and he didn't need any further explanation. The sorrow of seeing Qiuling in her miserable state turned into anxiety and excitement when he saw that Feng Wu was going to make a breakthrough. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was at war inside her head. It felt as if a storm was brewing in her dantian. Spiritual energy in the air rushed toward Feng Wu and kept pouring in through her nostrils and her skin. Streaks of spiritual energy gathered above the water of her dantian. Sizzle! Fire spiritual energy clashed with the water of her dantian, creating a spiritual liquid which dripped down. Almost there. She was that close to filling her dantian. However, Feng Wu realized in disappointment that she was running out of spiritual energy. She was finally ready to break through, and if she stopped here, she didn't know when the epiphany would come again. Feng Wu felt like crying. Just then, a tiny fluffy thing woke up and crawled out of Feng Wu's chest pocket, still sleepy-eyed. It was Feng Tutu. The cub exhaled and a streak of pale green spiritual energy flew into Feng Wu's nostrils. Spiritual energy. Feng Wu was elated. Without thinking, she transported that additional spiritual energy into her dantian. It then turned into spiritual liquid and dripped down. Finally, her dantian was filled to the point of spilling over. Now! Feng Wu growled. At that moment, a bolt of lightning struck Fallen Star Yard. What was that? Feng Yanfeng and the rest of his family were lying around in a courtyard next to Flying Snow Building. They were being treated for their wounds when the lightning struck, and they almost jumped to their feet in fright. Was that lightning? Was that a lightning tribulation? Chapter 4:14 Her cover is blown. Chapter 4:14 Her cover is blown. Feng Yanfeng and the rest of his family were lying around in a room next to the collapsed Flying Snow Building. It was a crushing defeat. Everyone had bruises all over their faces and eyes as swollen as walnuts. Dad, Mum, Waf, Feng Lu cried from both the physical pain and humiliation. Lady Wang was fuming. That Feng Wu is so defiant. How could she do this? How? Feng Yiran clenched his fists. I'm going to make him regret what he did to me. Feng Sang had been slapped as many times as the others had, and she took a deep breath. He can't be with Feng Wu around the clock. Feng Yanfeng's face was livid. As the head of the Feng clan, what would other people think of him if they knew that he had been humiliated like this? Thanks to this common enemy, this family had never been as united as they were now. And that was why Feng Wu was so mad at Yuminji. Feng Wu had humiliated Feng Lu on purpose during that incident in the Yen Manor, so that Feng Yanfeng would blame Feng Lu and Lady Wang. Feng Wu had been trying to drive a wedge between the members of that family. Once that was achieved, she would defeat each of them separately, Such was Feng Wu's original plan. Feng Wu wouldn't have recklessly taken her family back to the clan without a good strategy. Yuminji had not only injured these people, he had even destroyed Flying Snow Building. As satisfying as that was, he had ruined Feng Wu's painstaking efforts. Feng Wu was mad at him for that reason. However, Yuminji was used to plain sailing and could never understand why Feng Wu had to be so meticulous. Just as Feng Yanfeng's family was discussing what to do to get their revenge, united in their shared goal, the lightning struck. Rumble. It's not windy or rainy and that lightning just came out of nowhere. Can it be a lightning tribulation? Lady Wang felt uneasy. Feng Lu said weakly, "That's in the direction of Fallen Star Yard, right? How can it be a lightning tribulation? Someone up there must find Feng Wu too bold, and is trying to kill her with lightning." No one thought about the possibility that Feng Wu was breaking through. However, someone else other than Feng Yanfeng's family had noticed it. And that person was Yuminji. After Feng Wu left, the more Yuminji thought about it, the more aggrieved he became. He had helped Feng Wu and taken out those people for her. Why had she reprimanded him for her? And his foot had been stepped on. He was very upset. Yuminji, the sacred son of the Dark Court, was never known for a good temper, and he wasn't going to stay here for one more second. However, he only took a few steps before he sensed the lightning striking Fallen Star Yard. Shit! It wouldn't kill that girl, would it? Yuminji panicked and he rushed toward Fallen Star Yard right away. 3 elders followed Yuminji around the clock. They were Elders 1, 2, and 3. Elder 1 frowned and so did Elder 2. Elder 3 rubbed his nose and made a comment. Didn't he say that he would never talk to that girl again? He's running faster than a rabbit. Yuminji ignored them. Jumping over the wall of Fallen Star Yard like a shooting arrow, he landed in the courtyard shouting, "Little Feng Wu, let me fend off that lightning strike for you." But, before he could make his next move, Yuminji realized in surprise that it was a lightning tribulation. It wasn't a lightning strike, but a lightning tribulation? The thing that would only happen to cultivators? Yuminji was astonished. Rubbing his eyes, he looked up again. Feng Wu sat there cross-legged as streaks of lightning sparked in the air around her. Yuminji! Chapter 4:15, You Big, Fat Liar. Chapter 4:15, You Big, Fat Liar. Yuminji watched in disbelief. A fucking lightning tribulation. And it struck Feng Wu right on her crown. Right now, Feng Wu was absorbing the energy in that lightning to refine her body. That was to say, little Feng Wu was breaking through. What happened to her having no cultivation ability? And what about her being useless? What the hell? Judging by the power of this lightning tribulation, Yuminji realized in surprise that the useless little Feng Wu was breaking through to the spiritual grandmaster stage. Standing there holding the dagger, Feng Xiaoqi glared at Yuminji. If Yuminji dared disturb Feng Wu, Feng Xiaoqi wouldn't hesitate to fight the guy to death. Luckily, Yuminji didn't move. He only glowered at Feng Wu with unblinking eyes. Granny Zhao and Uncle Chiu were very concerned. What were they supposed to do now? Their mistress had stressed over and over again that they had to keep this a secret. Their lives would be threatened if word got out. However, her cover had just been blown. While everyone was staring at Yuminji in bewilderment, Feng Wu finished consuming the lightning energy. She breathed out and opened her limpid eyes. Uncle Chiu, Granny Zhao. Feng Wu batted her long eyelashes, her eyes twinkling in excitement. I've reached the spiritual grandmaster stage. Ah, I'm finally a spiritual grandmaster. Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao returned her exclamation with despairing looks on their faces. They had thought about the possibility of talking themselves out of this. However, their mistress had just announced it herself. It was all over. Granny Zhao gestured at a spot behind Feng Wu with her right index finger. Feng Wu turned around in confusion. and she saw Yu Minji with that indecipherable look on his face. Feng Wu. Yu Minji stared at Feng Wu, then smirked. A spiritual grandmaster? Congratulations, Miss Feng Wu. She was a spiritual grandmaster when only earlier today she had pretended to be completely crippled. Seriously? Once the initial shock was over, Yu Minji was furious for having been fooled like this. After casting a stern look at Feng Wu, he turned to leave. Feng Wu woke up from her astonishment at that moment. No. She couldn't let Yu Minji leave like this. If word of her recovery got out and the others knew about her cultivation stage, the Zhou family would come at her right away. Feng Wu wasn't strong enough to fight against the entire Zhou family yet. At that thought, Feng Wu ran out after him. Yu Minji, wait, Feng Wu called after Yu Minji. But Yu Minji didn't look back. Even his back looked angry. Yu Minji. Feng Wu soon caught up with him and grabbed his hand. Yu Minji glared at Feng Wu. Let go. Calm down. How can I? Glaring at Feng Wu, Yu Minji said in vexation, What am I to you? Aren't you supposed to be useless and crippled? But you can cultivate and you're a spiritual grandmaster already. You big fat liar. Yu Minji. By now, they had left the Feng manor and were out on the street. Yu Minji didn't try to keep his voice down at all. Growing up in an indulgent environment, Yu Minji knew no forbearance or prudence. Keep your voice down. Feng Wu looked around. The street was deserted at this hour, but someone could be lurking in some dark corner. Chapter 416 I'm Not Listening to You. Chapter 416 I'm Not Listening to You. Moreover, they were right outside the Feng manor. Someone inside might hear them. Why should I keep my voice down? No. I'm going to shout as loudly as I want. Feng Wu, you're a big liar. The biggest liar in the world, you. Feng Wu cut him off by putting a hand over his mouth. Feng Wu was infuriated by this unreasonable, unruly big baby. He was forcing her to yell at him. Feng Wu glared at him. Shut up. Right now. Yu Minji returned her gaze angrily. Feng Wu stared back even more fiercely. As soon as Feng Wu flared up, Yu Minji began to cower. He looked like a deflating balloon and was flattened as one watched. In the end, he looked at Feng Wu sadly with accusatory, puppy-dog eyes. You're so mean. At the same time, the Crown Prince was in his own residence. Get out! Granny Gong had come in with some late-night snack, but the irritated Crown Prince only bellowed at her with a wave of his hand. The gust of wind cut the tray to pieces and it shattered all over the floor. Granny Gong gave Feng a pleading look. Feng returned it with a look of resignation. His Royal Highness had left the residence earlier in a great mood. However, when he came back, he shut himself in his study and smashed everything to pieces. Before, His Royal Highness was merciless and lofty, but had always put on an expressionless face and had wonderful control over his emotions. Recently, however, he had lost control twice already. Feng rubbed his forehead. He didn't even have to guess. His Royal Highness had fallen out with Miss Feng Wu again. Your Royal Highness! Feng entered the study, walking on the floor covered in broken porcelain. There was no warmth in Jun Linyuan's eyes, and he looked as fierce as a cornered beast. He reminded Feng of a cheetah ready to attack. Your Royal Highness, I was informed that after Miss Wu got back to the Feng Manor. Shut up! Jun Linyuan exploded and his brooding eyes spat shards of ice. I don't want to hear about her ever again. He could still hear Feng Wu's voice in his head. I'd rather fall in love with Feng Sun. She would choose Feng Sun over him? To her, even Feng Sun was better than him, the Crown Prince. He couldn't bear it. Boss Jun wanted to beat Feng Sun up again. Feng hesitated. But it's about the Feng. Since when do you defy my orders? Jun Linyuan shot a stern look at Feng, his voice infuriated. Feng rubbed his nose and turned to leave. Stop! Jun Linyuan was able to recollect himself before Feng left the room. Speak! Feng's eyes flickered. Your Royal Highness, Miss Wu was bullied by Feng Yanfeng and his family after she got back. Jun Linyuan cut Feng off with a smirk. She's so proud and self-centered that she deserves a good kick in the ass. What's wrong with that? After all, with what that girl was capable of, Feng Yanfeng was never going to be her match. Feng added, then. Jun Linyuan silenced him with a wave of his hand. Feng was speechless. He hadn't reached the part where Yuminji had come to Miss Feng Wu's aid and demolished Flying Snow Building. Out, the proud Crown Prince ordered. Feng sighed, shook his head, and did as told. Chapter 417 A Very Big Misunderstanding. Chapter 417 A Very Big Misunderstanding. Yuminji accused Feng Wu with his eyes. You yelled at me. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Listen. No, I won't. I won't. Covering his ears with both hands, Yuminji behaved like a kid. Feng Wu shouted, Yuminji. And you yelled at me again? Yuminji said indignantly. What on earth do you want me to do? Feng Wu didn't know what to do with this goofball. Beg me. Yuminji gloated. Say, brother Yuminji, please don't tell anyone else. Please? Say it. Yuminji prompted Feng Wu. Feng Wu. Yuminji seemed to love that idea and he gave Feng Wu a sidelong glance in satisfaction. That's right. Beg me. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Crossing his arms over his chest, Yuminji snorted. Do that or I'm going to tell everyone about it. Then everyone will. Feng Wu took another deep breath. Do I have any other options? Yuminji grinned. Nope. Feng Wu said, You'll keep it a secret if I do that. Yuminji said proudly, Of course. I always keep my word and I won't tell another soul. You'll keep the secret from me after I say that. Yes. Fine. Feng Wu rolled up her sleeves. They were just words and it wouldn't hurt her. Mimicking Yuminji's tone, Feng Wu said those words in a cloying voice. To demonstrate how devoted she was, Feng Wu even tugged Yuminji's sleeve and looked into his eyes. If one were to observe them from afar, one would think that they were staring at each other in an affectionate way. Wow! Feng Wu! It's really you! Someone cried out in surprise. Feng Wu's heart sank and she had a very bad feeling about this. She turned to look. Mu Yaoyao. Feng Wu had met her a few times in northern border city. Mu Yaoyao had joined hands with Feng Lu and tried to set Feng Wu up a few times. However, none of them worked and Mu Yaoyao had wound up eating her own bitter fruit. Why are you here? Feng Wu frowned. I wouldn't have seen that great scene if I wasn't here. Mu Yaoyao widened her eyes in an exaggerated way. Feng Wu, I thought you were in love with the Crown Prince. Why are you all over Yuminji now? You're such a frivolous, shameless woman. Feng Wu frowned a little. She couldn't be bothered to argue with Mu Yaoyao and was ready to leave with Yuminji. There was something else she needed to tell Yuminji. However, Mu Yaoyao wouldn't let her. What? You're trying to run away after being spotted? Mu Yaoyao glared at Feng Wu. Women like you don't deserve to love the Crown Prince. Feng Wu was speechless. Mu Yaoyao kept her gaze on Feng Wu. Leave the Crown Prince alone or I'll tell everyone how brazen you are. She stormed off after that. She was so thrilled. Yuminji would be a very desirable man if Jun Linyuan, the unparalleled genius, didn't exist in this world. However, there he was. If I can make the thing between Feng Wu and Yuminji stick, Mu Yaoyao finally figured out a way to tarnish Feng Wu's reputation. Shall I kill her? Yuminji sounded as casual as if he was talking about the weather. Feng Wu asked in resignation, Is killing people as simple as drinking or eating for you? Yuminji shrugged. Feng Wu then asked, Why do you need to kill her? Chapter 418 Congratulations, Miss. Chapter 418 Congratulations, Miss. Why kill her? Did that need to be asked? Yuminji smirked. That woman was watching you with pure hatred and conceit. Only then did Feng Wu realize that despite the goofy teenager's bright smile, he was still from the dark court. He had grown up watching people kill each other, and a bloody massacre wouldn't even make him blink. Taking lives came to him as naturally as breathing. Recalling what Mu Yaoyao had done to her back in northern border city, Feng Wu snorted. If someone is going to kill her, it has to be me. That's right. Yuminji's eyes lit up. You're a pretty decent cultivator yourself, and you won't break a sweat killing her. That reminded Yuminji of Feng Wu's lie, and he got cross again. He glared at Feng Wu with puffed-out cheek. Feng Wu rubbed her temples. How could the teenager be so vengeful? She said grumpily, Fine, I kept it a secret from you. When are you going to let it drop? Plus, you're the only person outside of my family who knows about it. Feng Sun doesn't know? Yuminji's eyes flickered. No. And Xian Yi doesn't know? No. What about Jun Linyuan? I don't think he knows. I didn't tell him, anyway, Feng Wu said affirmatively. Yuminji, who had been vexed a moment ago, became excited. Grabbing Feng Wu's hands, he said with eyes that sparkled like the brightest stars in the night sky, Jun Linyuan doesn't know? He doesn't? Ha 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 ha. He really doesn't know? Feng Wu nodded. Ha ha ha, Yuminji was so pleased. He was in on the secret when Jun Linyuan wasn't. Ha 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 ha. Yuminji couldn't keep the excitement out of his voice, and he gazed at Feng Wu with wide-open eyes. Don't tell Jun Linyuan about your cultivation ability. This is between us now. Okay? Feng Wu was speechless. Why was Yuminji so happy over such a petty thing? However, since Yuminji had promised to keep the secret, which put her mind at ease, Feng Wu nodded. Okay. Since Yuminji was still grinning, Feng Wu snapped, I see you have nothing better to do. Do me a favor then. What do you need? Yuminji was thrilled. Little Feng Wu hadn't asked Feng Sun or Jun Linyuan for help, but had turned to him instead. He was so happy. Feng Wu then whispered something in Yuminji's ear. No problem. Consider it done. Yuminji patted his chest, then dashed off. After that, Feng Wu returned to Fallen Star Yard. Sister! Feng Xiaoqi ran toward her in a hurry, the dagger still in his hand. His forehead was covered with sweat. Sister! Sister! What happened? Is that bad guy going to tell on you? Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao also watched Feng Wu anxiously. Feng Wu smiled. We're safe. Phew, everyone let out breaths of relief and relaxed. It was so frightening. Granny Zhao was the first to come back to herself, and she smiled at Feng Wu. Congratulations, Mississippi. You're finally a spiritual grandmaster. Uncle Chiu also cupped his hands in excitement. Congratulations. No one could have leveled up at such a tremendous speed like you. Chuling also made her way to the courtyard with much difficulty, and excited tears covered her face. Miss Wu was the backbone of this family. Members of this family could only walk tall when she was strong enough. Feng Wu looked around at everyone and said, My own improvement won't be enough. From now on, Uncle Chiu, Xiaoqi, and Chuling, you all have to start cultivating. Chapter 419 Ultimate Spiritual Body. Chapter 419 Ultimate Spiritual Body. Uncle Chiu was a level 8 spiritual master, while both Chuling and Xiaoqi were level 1 spiritual masters. Back in northern border city, Feng Wu had yet to become a spiritual grandmaster, and even when she was already a master medicine refiner, she couldn't offer them much help. But things had changed now. Feng Wu said, Chuling needs to recover from her injuries first, but Uncle Chiu and Xiaoqi, you two need to start ASAP. After that, Feng Wu turned to Uncle Chiu first. Uncle Chiu, you've been stuck at level 8 for years. You've gathered enough spiritual energy, but what you lack is the comprehension of your cultivation. I need a pen, Feng Wu reached out with her right hand. Granny Zhao brought her a writing brush and ink immediately. Feng Wu was very serious when she taught, and everyone listened in silence. Feng Wu finished her writing in one go. After blowing the ink dry, she handed Uncle Chiu a thin pamphlet. Uncle Chiu, this is Book of Tongtian, a revision of Book of Batian, which you have been using for your cultivation. That was to say, based on Book of Batian, Feng Wu had customized a cultivation manual specifically for Uncle Chiu. What she had done was beyond anything a spiritual grandmaster could do. Uncle Chiu took Book of Tongtian with trembling hands and eyes filled with excitement. Thank you, Miss Wu. Feng Wu nodded. I'll be out and about a lot from now on, so Uncle Chiu, I'll leave the safety of this family in your hands. Uncle Chiu nodded solemnly. As long as you put your mind to it, Uncle Chiu, I promise that you can break through to level 9 in 10 days. Uncle Chiu was thrilled. He had been stuck at level 8 for so long that he had pretty much given up. If anyone else told him that he could make it to the next level in 10 days, he would only think the person insane. However, he wouldn't question a word Feng Wu said. Sister, what about me? Feng Xiaoqi looked up at his big sister. To him, his sister was God. Feng Wu smiled at him. Do you know why I didn't allow you to cultivate before? No, Feng Xiaoqi was an obedient boy. He wouldn't try to cultivate since his sister had said so and no one could persuade him otherwise. Because I've been enhancing your body for the past 5 years. You had a semi-ultimate spiritual body before. Although that would make you a prodigy of your generation in the Junwu Empire, what we're aiming for is far beyond that. Xiaoqi, we're going to make you a prodigy across all generations. That's why I've been keeping you from cultivating. But it's time now. Xiaoqi, you can start. All right. Feng Xiaoqi beamed at her. Sitting Xiaoqi down in the correct position, Feng Wu taught him everything from scratch. Feng Wu's beautiful master used to rule over this continent, and she had been well taught. In terms of theoretical knowledge, Feng Wu was as good as the most superior cultivators in this land. She had enough knowledge to set up a sect of her own. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to revise Uncle Chiu's manual in such a short time and change it into something that was most suitable for him. Because of Feng Xiaoqi's ultimate spiritual body, after some careful consideration, Feng Wu chose ultimate spiritual divine power for him to practice. The most wonderful thing about this manual was that it fitted Feng Xiaoqi's ultimate spiritual body perfectly. He wouldn't have to spend time on additional comprehension, and the breakthrough would come naturally as he cultivated. That was to say, this book was not only suitable for Xiaoqi's physical quality, it matched his temperament as well. Miss I. Chapter 420 No One Was Left Out. Chapter 420 No One Was Left Out. Qiuling lay in bed. Despite her ghastly pale face, her eyes were as bright as stars. And she was staring at Feng Wu eagerly. Feng Wu looked back at her and sighed. You were not born with the most suitable quality for cultivation. Qiuling had heard it more than once from her mistress, but it still hurt to hear it now. Even with herbal baths, your physical quality can't be changed. Qiuling was on the verge of breaking into tears. But Feng Wu smiled a little at Qiuling. Give me your hand now. Qiuling looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment, but still did as told. Feng Wu rested her fingers on Qiuling's wrist for a few seconds, and a mix of surprise and comprehension flickered in her eyes. Miss? Qiuling looked at Feng Wu in wonder. Why was her mistress looking at her like that? It was kind of scary. Feng Wu smiled a little. Qiuling, I finally see what a blessing in disguise is. I've been too gentle with you. Huh. Qiuling was at a loss. Miss WH, what's wrong? Feng Wu sighed. Rubbing her eyes, she smiled bitterly. I didn't know this was possible. How could I have never thought of it before? I could slap myself. Miss? Qiuling was even more bewildered. Feng Wu said, "Didn't Granny Gui poke you with long, thick needles?" "Yes," Feng Wu said earnestly. "Granny Gui's strikes were completely random, and because of that, she accidentally removed most of the impurities in your body. It's thanks to your persistence over the years that those impurities can be removed in the first place." Qiuling was shocked. "What?" Feng Wu nodded. "As a cultivator, you used to be very ordinary in terms of your natural endowment. You would only be a level 5 spiritual master at most if you go down that path. That's why I've been telling you that you aren't built for cultivation." Feng Wu knew how hard Qiuling tried. The girl would practice on her own, but the impurities stopped her from making any progress, and she had to give up in the end. Tears welled up in Qiuling's eyes, and she clenched her fists under the duvet. She hadn't felt the pressure of becoming a better cultivator in the beginning. However, when her mistress fell 5 years ago, the family had no one else strong enough to depend on, and they felt as feeble as a boat on a stormy ocean, ready to capsize at any moment. That was why Qiuling wanted to get stronger. She wanted to protect this family. But there was nothing she could do about her mediocre quality. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make any breakthroughs. She would cry in disappointment every time, and she would resume her practice after she stopped crying, but she was still a level 1 spiritual master. No one could know how upset she was. "Miss, are you saying that I have a talent for it now?" Qiuling looked at Feng Wu in excitement. Looking at her maid, who was trembling with joy, Feng Wu nodded. "Yes, you do. And with my help, your future will be very promising." "Does that mean that we all can?" "No." Feng Wu cut her off. "You were able to obtain this talent because you never gave up despite all the failures, because you set your mind on cultivation, and because of this huge coincidence. What happened to you can't be replicated." Qiuling nodded. "If Lady Wang sends people here to ask about you, tell them to thank Granny Gui for us." "Teehee," Qiuling giggled. Feng Wu grinned at her. "Get well first and start your cultivation 3 days later. You can study that Book of Wood for now, and I'll give you something else when you reach level 5. Chapter 421 Beautiful Master. Chapter 421 Beautiful Master. After leaving Uncle Chiu, Xiaoqi, and Qiuling instructions on their cultivation, Feng Wu went back to her own room. She smiled bitterly when she was on her own. Cultivation required spiritual energy. Previously, she had been the only cultivator in the family, and she didn't need too many spiritual stones. With 3 new members on board, Feng Wu realized that she was running low on spiritual stones. No, she couldn't just sit here and wait for spiritual stones to fall in her lap. She needed to search for them actively. A figure as nimble as a cat jumped out of Fallen Star Yard later that night. The Feng clan had a store of spiritual stones, and Feng Yanfeng held the key to the storage room. However, Feng Wu didn't need a key for such a door. As the genius girl of the family, the entire vault used to be Feng Wu's own. However, the clan wouldn't spare her any spiritual stones after she lost her ability. And of course Feng Wu wouldn't let that happen. She ran as swiftly as a cat on its night patrol. After reaching the spiritual grandmaster stage, Feng Wu was even faster than before. She reached the vault of the Feng clan in no time. Needless to say, the vault was guarded. However, Feng Wu took Feng Tutu out of her chest pocket and whispered something in its ear. At the mention of food, Feng Tutu's eyes lit up and it gave a little cheerful cry. Clatter, Feng Wu threw out a pebble deliberately. "Who's there?" The guards heard it. They were well trained. Feng Tutu made a little noise in the darkness, then dashed off. While Feng Tutu lured the guards away, Feng Wu jumped onto the 2nd floor of the vault. She knew that the 3rd window on the 2nd floor could be opened from outside, for she had made it so. And she was right. Pushing the window open, Feng Wu swiftly made her way inside, then closed the window behind her. It all happened in a split second. The guards consisted of a 10-man team, and each shift was 2 hours long. The captain of the current shift was Feng Baoshan. Seeing that several guards had run off after the sound, he called after them in a hurry, "Get back here, now." "Captain," Feng Baoshan said, "you're all overreacting. It was just a rat." "Really? Since when are there rats in the manor?" all the other guards thought to themselves. Feng Baoshan wasn't thinking about the vault tonight. Everyone in the manor had been talking. Lady Wang's flying snow building had collapsed. The explanation they had been given was that the building had been in disrepair and that the lightning strike had been the last straw. However, everyone at the level of a captain or above had their own ideas. Flying snow building had toppled before that lightning strike. Exactly what happened to Feng Yanfeng's family. However, that branch of the clan was very tight-lipped and no one knew what really happened. Feng Wu had no idea what was going on in the captain's head. She was like a cat in a canary's nest. She wasn't the only one in need of spiritual stones. Xiaoqi, Qiuling, and Uncle Qiu all needed them. So, she was going to take a lot. Moreover, Feng Wu had other plans. She had no interest in the books on the shelves, for she had read them all when she was little. Plus, she could create much better manuals than those on the shelves. She went up to the 3rd floor. Feng Wu knew this place like the back of her hand. Opening a hidden door, she entered and opened the first chest she saw. It was filled with spiritual stones. Bingo! Feng Wu stored it in her ring. There were 2 more chests of spiritual stones. After some thought, Feng Wu decided to leave them here. She could always come back for more when she needed them. After all, her beautiful master was in the ring as well. Chapter 422 Breakthrough. Chapter 422 Breakthrough. She didn't want to pile up the space with too much stuff, for it felt disrespectful toward her beautiful master. However, after reaching the spiritual grandmaster stage, Feng Wu could make complicated seals with her hands now. Raising both hands, Feng Wu's fingers moved swiftly. A golden seal soon appeared in the air, which then buried itself in the 2 chests. No matter where these 2 chests of spiritual stones were taken, she would be able to find them when she needed them later. Wait, was that a small chest of jade stones? Judging by the thick layer of dust over the chest, it had sat there for a very long time. Feng Wu was anything but courteous and she took all the jade stones. She then summoned Feng Tutu back. As expected, after Feng Tutu deliberately made some noise, all the guards were lured away again. Taking the opportunity, Feng Wu shot out of the window on the 2nd floor and hid herself in the shadows of the trees. Feng Tutu was unbelievably fast for how plump it looked. The guards had 0 luck trying to catch up with it and they eventually gave up. Feng Wu sat down happily at the table after she got back to Fallen Star Yard. Miss Granny Zhao came in with some sweet lotus seed soup and almost dropped the bowl when she saw all the white and green jade stones on the table. "Miss W, where did you get those?" She had only gone off to make a late-night snack and her mistress had made a quick profit in that short period of time. What Feng Wu was doing at the moment was a reckless waste of this natural treasure. She was extracting jade essence. The white jade stones were softer in texture and the green ones were harder. But to Feng Tutu, as long as the jade stone could provide it with jade essence, it didn't care how soft or hard the stone was. Feng Wu looked up at Granny Zhao and gave the latter a smile. "What do you think? They belong to the clan, don't they?" Granny Zhao said in resignation. "Yup," Feng Wu said in a devil-may-care tone. To other people, these stones are pretty jewelry pieces they can carry around, but to Feng Tutu, they're its favorite food. Feng Wu had discovered one of Feng Tutu's abilities already, which was to provide her with spiritual energy. Feng Wu had been in desperate need of some extra spiritual energy when she was breaking through to the spiritual grandmaster stage. She couldn't have made that progress without Feng Tutu's contribution. Feng Tutu was like the ultimate healer, and its ability would be of great use in combat. As tiny as it was now, it could already produce quite a lot of spiritual energy. What would happen when it grew bigger? Feng Wu was looking forward to it. The following day, a little after dawn. Sister, sister, sister. Feng Wu was still asleep when Feng Xiaoqi rushed into her room and shook her arm in excitement. Last night, Feng Wu had extracted jade essence from all the jade stones she obtained, which had exhausted her. She fell asleep right after. Sister, Feng Xiaoqi's voice seemed to have a penetrating power. What? Feng Wu sat up with her duvet in her arms. She rubbed her sleepy eyes. Sister, look at me. Look. Feng Xiaoqi twirled around in front of Feng Wu. Sister, do you see any difference in me? Still half asleep, Feng Wu looked at Feng Xiaoqi from head to toe, and her eyes widened all of a sudden. Sister? Sister? Teehee. Feng Xiaoqi grinned. He wanted to tell everyone the good news. You're a level 3 spiritual master already. Even Feng Wu was surprised. It had only been one night and Feng Xiaoqi had leveled up twice. That was incredible. Chapter 423 New House. Chapter 423 New House. That's great. Feng Wu nodded with a smile. It's faster than I expected. The ultimate spiritual body is indeed incredible. Granny Zhao came in with breakfast at that moment and she almost dropped her tray when she heard the conversation. Level 3? Young Master Qi is a level 3 spiritual master already? Granny Zhao was astonished. That's right. Feng Xiaoqi gloated. Level 3? Who are you talking about? A teenager hurried toward them. It was none other than Yuminji. However, Granny Zhao stopped him before he could set foot inside. It wouldn't be appropriate for him to enter a young lady's bedchamber. Feng Xiaoqi rushed out as well and glared at Yuminji. Yuminji's eyes lit up when he spotted Feng Xiaoqi. Hey, weren't you level 1 yesterday? Why are you level 3 already? Did you take an elixir or something? Of course not, Feng Xiaoqi said earnestly. Then how did you do it? Yuminji didn't believe him. How? That question baffled Feng Xiaoqi. Tilting his head, he said, I don't know. I fell asleep while cultivating and when I woke up, I was a level 3 spiritual master. Yuminji refused to believe it. No one could make progress that effortlessly. Even a genius like himself had to climb up one step at a time. It's not like you're an ancient divine beast, Yuminji mumbled. Just then, the door opened and Feng Wu came out, looking refreshed. Yuminji's face lit up at the sight of Feng Wu. You have everything? Feng Wu asked. Yuminji nodded. I've prepared everything you asked for. But are you sure I can bring everything here? Since Feng Yanfeng was still in charge of the manor, Feng Wu gave it some thought, then said, I'll go have a look with you. Yuminji was looking forward to a moment alone with Feng Wu. That's great. Sister, I'm coming with you. Feng Xiaoqi glared at Yuminji, viewing the latter a dumb bear that was trying to lure his sister away. As dumb as this guy looked, he was still a suspicious bear. However, at that moment, a tumult of voices came from outside, which didn't sound very nice at all. Granny Zhao hurried out to have a look and she frowned at what she saw. Half a dozen grannies stood outside and were making veiled accusations of the people of Fallen Star Yard. A short distance away, other servants were stealing glances in this direction. Lady Wang must have sent them, Granny Zhao frowned. Miss, the main kitchen stopped sending us fresh food since this morning. And water too, Granny Zhao added. Are they going to starve us to death now? Feng Wu frowned. It seemed that Lady Wang was openly confronting her now. With all the cultivators here, they were in urgent need of an undisturbed environment. Feng Wu told Uncle Chiu, who had come out in a hurry, Uncle Chiu, go out now and see if there's any house on sale. No problem. Miss, are we moving out? Granny Zhao was a little concerned. Without the protection of the clan, Other people may covet your mother for her beauty. Feng Wu shook her head. I'm always out and about. Leaving you all in the manor is even more dangerous. As for our safety after we move out, I'll figure something out soon. She then turned to Yuminji. Take everything to my new house after that's settled. It'll save us an extra trip. Chapter 424 Why do you need Feng Sun? Chapter 424 Why do you need Feng Sun? Yuminji sulked, for he didn't like Feng Wu giving in. How can you be so cowardly? You run away the minute other people try to corner you. If I were you, I'd kill them all. Why are you doing this to yourself? Feng Wu looked at Yuminji as if she was looking at an idiot. If it wasn't for what he had done last night, which had broken the delicate balance, she could still try to work her plan one bit at a time, and she wouldn't have to move anywhere. She wasn't giving in. What she needed now was a quiet, safe place with dense spiritual energy for her and her family to cultivate in. Feng Wu's face softened when she saw how relieved her mother was. Here in the Feng Manor, her mother was confined to this fallen star yard, which could be quite suffocating. After Feng Wu found a new house, she would set up formations and her mother would be much safer living there. Miss. Before long, Uncle Chiu ran back in a hurry. Miss, Grand Secretary Feng, our next-door neighbor, is retiring soon, and he's selling his house. Uncle Chiu was very efficient, and there's a smaller house on sale 2 streets away. Those are the only 2 I can find for now. Sister, are we going to buy a new house? Feng Xiaoqi was thrilled. Xiaoqi, do you want to move out? Yes. Move, move. The beautiful lady held Feng Wu's hand and looked very pitiful. Sure, sure. We're moving out soon. Feng Wu rubbed her mother's head. She had been wrong. She thought that by coming back to the Feng Manor, her family would at least have some protection. She had planned to lay low for a while, and everything would be better when she was strong enough. But as it turned out, her family had suffered, which was something Feng Wu couldn't stand. But sister, do we have enough money for a house? Feng Xiaoqi asked. All eyes turned to Feng Wu. During the 5 years in northern border city, Feng Wu had spent all her time improving her medicine refinement skills, which was why she was able to reach the master level in a mere 5 years. No one else in the imperial capital could have done that. However, her beautiful master had left instructions, forbidding her from making any profit from the medicine she made, and Feng Wu always followed her master's orders. So, she had never made a penny from treating her patients. We'll have the money. Feng Wu didn't think that the money would be a problem. Uncle Chiu, what kind of prices are we looking at? Feng Wu asked. Grand Secretary Feng's manor is square in shape with his northern gate facing the street and the southern gate facing a lake. It's got a great location. Although it's not as big as our manor, but the price. How much? Feng Wu asked. 100,000 taels of silver, and 3 spiritual herbs comprised of a 1,000-year-old ginseng, a 5,000-year-old lingji mushroom, and a 10,000-year-old Chinese knotweed. Uncle Chiu smiled bitterly. How about we check out that smaller house first? Feng Wu knew the layout of Grand Secretary Feng's manor. Her master had said back then that Grand Secretary Feng's courtyard was ideal for setting up an essence-gathering formation, which would take advantage of Cloud Lake in the north. No, we're buying Grand Secretary Feng's house. Feng Wu then turned to Yuminji. I need to go to Feng Sun. You can do whatever you want now. Why Feng Sun? Yuminji flared up. What do you need him for? I can give you the money if you don't have it. And those herbs too. I'll kill Grand Secretary Feng for you if he won't sell you the house. So, what do you need Feng Sun for? Yuminji glared at Feng Wu. I'm so much better than him. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. What was this fit of pique about? Chapter 425 What Good News? Chapter 425 What Good News? However, she still explained to him, Sir Yen is the husband of Feng Sun's eldest aunt on his father's side. If Feng Yanfeng wants a promotion, he has to get Sir Yan's approval first. I'm going to get Feng Yanfeng the position he wants, but he'll have to pay for it. 100,000 taels of silver will be a price he's willing to pay. Feng Wu was never going to use her own money to buy that house, but let Feng Yanfeng pay it for her. What do you need Feng Sun for? I can make that happen for you. Yuminji puffed out his cheeks. Huh. Feng Wu was baffled. Aren't you from the Dark Court? That's right. Aren't you people the surviving supporters of the previous dynasty? That's right. So, aren't you supposed to not show your faces in public? Says who? Yuminji protested. Of course we can walk around in broad daylight. I can walk all the way into the royal palace now if I want to. But why? Feng Wu was at a loss. Because, Yuminji said cheerfully, Dark City, where our Dark Court is located, has declared its independence from the Junwu Empire, and we have our own emperor now. That is to say, I'm officially the crown prince of the Dark Empire. And there's more. Because of some reason, which I can't tell you, your emperor needs the Dark Empire's help. The fact that it could force Emperor Wu to consent to its independence showed how powerful the Dark Court was. Emperor Wu needed the Dark Empire's help? Although Feng Wu didn't know why, she was certain that Yuminji was telling the truth, for he wouldn't lie about something like that. Make your uncle the assistant minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel, right? Is that position good enough? I can make him a minister if you want. Yuminji grinned. Feng Wu smiled wryly. An assistant minister will do. He won't be there very long anyway. Yuminji was thrilled that he could be of help to Feng Wu, for that proved how close Feng Wu was to him. She didn't go to Jun Linyuan, did she? The more Yuminji thought about it, the more satisfied he was. Feng Wu went to Feng Yanfeng straight away. Feng Lu stopped her outside the study. Feng Wu, what are you doing here? Feng Lu glared at Feng Wu, wanting to tear the latter to pieces. Feng Wu smiled. I have good news for Uncle. What good news? I'm not telling you. Get lost. Feng Lu bellowed. You're not welcome here. Get out of my sight. It's about that position of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel. Are you sure my uncle doesn't want to hear about it? Feng Wu said unhurriedly. Feng Lu was nothing but an aunt to her. Let her in. Feng Yanfeng gritted his teeth. Feng Wu raised an eyebrow at Feng Lu provocatively, which infuriated the latter. What news would make Feng Wu come here in person? Feng Lu ran off to fetch her mother right away. What news? Feng Yanfeng sat behind the table. The bruises on his face were almost gone. However, he still seemed to be seething with anger. He hadn't forgiven Feng Wu yet. Feng Wu sat down at the table without an invitation and smiled at Feng Yanfeng. Uncle, how would you like to become the assistant minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel? How would he like it? She sounded as if she could get him that position with a nod of her head. That was a third-rank post of the Empire. Uncle, have you forgotten? I'm Feng Sun's friend. Feng Wu smiled at him. If young Lord Feng had a hand in this, given his relationship with the Crown Prince, he could easily make Feng Yanfeng a minister, not to mention an assistant minister. Feng Yanfeng suddenly recalled that Feng Sun had indeed greeted Feng Wu when they were at the Yen Manor. But did they know each other well enough for Feng Sun to get Feng Yanfeng that position? Chapter 426 Reap What One Sows. Chapter 426 Reap What One Sows. Plus, do you still remember that teenager who beat you guys up last night? Feng Wu said with a half-smile. Feng Yanfeng jumped to his feet with a livid face. How dare you! Feng Yanfeng raised a hand to slap Feng Wu. It was an utter humiliation for Feng Yanfeng. However, Feng Wu only stared at him with a haughty look on her face and didn't try to dodge. Feng Xiaoqi had woken up this morning as a level 3 spiritual master. Feng Wu had also made some progress herself. She was a level 2 spiritual grandmaster now. At this speed, she would become a spiritual elder soon. Once she became a spiritual elder, she would win a place for herself in the cultivation circle in the imperial capital. Feng Wu had confidence in herself and she was very level-headed. Feng Yanfeng's hand almost landed on Feng Wu's face when he saw the calm look in her eyes. Involuntarily, his hand shifted a little and it brushed past Feng Wu's fair cheek. Crossing her hands behind her back, Feng Wu smiled. "Uncle, are you sure you don't want that position?" Of course he wanted it. He wanted it more than anything else. Feng Yanfeng stared at Feng Wu. "Your terms." By now, he knew perfectly well that Feng Wu was no ordinary girl. This girl could always surprise him. 100,000 taels of silver. What? Feng Yanfeng smacked the table. Are you out of your mind? That's ridiculous. Outside, Feng Lu was hurrying back to the study with her mother. Hearing Feng Yanfeng's roar, they exchanged looks and both let out breaths of relief. Feng Wu was an idiot. After what happened last night, Feng Yanfeng would never be on her side. She should consider herself lucky if Feng Yanfeng didn't strangle her at that moment. I hope father kills her himself. Feng Lu clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. It won't be long, her mother swore. Soon the door opened. Lady Wang and Feng Lu straightened up immediately. Their eyes widened when they saw Feng Wu come out without a scratch. The girl then left without sparing them a look. She left just like that? Lady Wang and Feng Lu watched as Feng Wu left. They then looked at each other before turning to Feng Yanfeng. My lord! Dad! They each took one of Feng Yanfeng's arms. Feng Lu clenched her fists. Dad, why didn't you beat her up? Why did you let her leave just like that? Lady Wang eyed Feng Yanfeng eagerly as well, waiting for an explanation. However, Feng Yanfeng only cast Feng Lu a stern look. You asked too much for a young lady. But Feng Wu let an outsider beat us up. Dad, you! Feng Lu was going to slander Feng Wu behind her back, but it only reminded Feng Yanfeng of what had happened at the Yen Manor and of the beating he had received from that mysterious teenager. That set him off right away and he slapped Feng Lu. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for you. You're the source of all my troubles. Feng Yanfeng then glared at Lady Wang. She's grounded for 3 months. Don't let her out. He stormed off after that, leaving the baffled Lady Wang and Feng Lu behind. Both were regretting showing up in the first place. Had they known this was going to happen, they would never have come here to laugh at Feng Wu's predicament. As it turned out, nothing happened to Feng Wu, but they had to reap what they had sown. They felt like crying, but no tears would come. Feng Wu sat on the wall of Fallen Star Yard. From there, she could see everything of Grand Secretary Feng's manor next door. It was exactly as Uncle Chiu said. Grand Secretary Feng's manor had a wonderful layout. Sitting there with her legs dangling over the wall, Feng Wu was already planning how to set up the formation once they moved in. Chapter 427, A Place of Treasure? Chapter 427, A Place of Treasure. The more Feng Wu thought about it, the more excited she became. However, at that moment, Feng Wu saw the steward of the manor showing several people in. The one leading the group was a teenage girl in a lilac dress. She was about 15 or 16 years of age, and looked quite mature already. She had an aggressive type of beauty, and there was something wild and fierce about her. Her own steward walked behind her and was chatting pleasantly with Steward Feng. Yi Yifei. She was Zhua Qingluan's elder cousin. That was why she looked so familiar. Feng Wu recalled that Yi Yifei used to follow Zhua Qingluan everywhere like a minion. What's she doing here? Feng Wu frowned. Because of the branches of the Chinese parasol tree, Feng Wu could see Yi Yifei, but Yi Yifei couldn't see Feng Wu. Does she want to buy this manor as well? Feng Wu murmured with a frown. Feng Wu hadn't been that into this manor in the beginning. However, she had already figured out how to draw the spiritual energy of the lake here for her formation, and she didn't want her plan to go to waste now. As a level 2 spiritual grandmaster, Feng Wu had exceptionally sharp hearing and sight, which enabled her to hear the conversation between the two stewards. My master is retiring soon and the manor is up for sale. Yes, for 100,000 taels of silver. The money alone isn't enough. You'll have to pass my master's test as well. Steward Fong handed them a piece of paper. Here's the problem. Whoever solves it is eligible to purchase the house. Yi Yifei took the piece of paper, had a look, and frowned. What's this? Steward Fong only smiled. Miss Yi, if you don't know what it is, you're probably not the right owner for this manor, Steward Fong said indifferently. Please come back in 3 days after you've solved the problem. After that, Steward Fong was ready to see them out. From where she was, Feng Wu couldn't see the question on the paper, but her attention was caught by an ancient well in the center of the courtyard. Am I seeing things? Feng Wu rubbed her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, she could still see the purple glow in the well. Thanks to her beautiful master's teachings, Feng Wu had read a lot of books across all subjects. Her eyes lit up when she saw that flickering purple glow under the sunlight. Feng Tutu. Just then, Feng Tutu jumped out and dashed off toward that well. Feng Tutu. Feng Wu covered her eyes. Yi Yifei and her people hadn't left yet. Would they spot Feng Tutu? Luckily, Feng Tutu was very fast and it jumped into the well before any of them noticed. Seeing that Steward Fong had gone away to see the guests out, Feng Wu jumped down from the wall, and the next second she was next to the well. Looking down, she noticed immediately that it was a dry well. And it had been that way for quite a long time, for the bottom was covered with rubble and dry leaves. But she couldn't see Feng Tutu anywhere. Feng Wu was surprised. She was certain that Feng Tutu had jumped into this well. Where was it now? Picking up a handful of sand, Feng Wu gave it a sniff. It smelled like. Feng Wu placed her right palm flat on the ground and reached downward with her spiritual essence, like a tree extending its roots. Chapter 428 A Load? Chapter 428 A Load? Just then, footsteps approached from outside again. Steward Fong, this manor. Sir Su, my master has stipulated a rule with regards to the sale of the manor. Only those that can answer this question will be eligible to purchase it. Steward Fong gave out another piece of paper. Sir Su. Feng Wu had no idea who that was, but she knew that she couldn't be spotted now. For Feng Tutu had come out with a translucent spiritual stone in its mouth. Judging by the appearance, it was a supreme-grade spiritual stone, and it was worth a small fortune. Feng Wu put away that spiritual stone immediately. Because of its grade, an advanced cultivator could easily detect its presence. As expected, Sir Su frowned just as Feng Wu put away that spiritual stone. What? He had detected a streak of spiritual energy, but it disappeared almost right away. Was he mistaken? Sir Su frowned. That only made him more eager. He had to have this manor. When Steward Fong went to see Sir Su off, Feng Wu jumped out of the well with Feng Tutu, and the next second she was back in her own yard. She had hidden the stone in her ring to stop Sir Su from detecting it. Now, she finally had time to examine it closely. Regular people used bronze, silver, and gold as their means of payment. But for cultivators, spiritual stones were the actual currency they used. For all cultivators needed spiritual stones to progress in their cultivation. In the Junwu Empire, based on the purity and concentration of spiritual energy, spiritual stones were categorized into 4 grades: low grade, medium grade, top grade, and the rarest supreme grade. The one Feng Tutu found was a top grade spiritual stone. Most of the spiritual stones in circulation on the market were of low and medium grade. Top-grade ones were very rarely found and inordinately expensive. Feng Wu examined the shape of the spiritual stone. It hadn't been cut by any tools, but had been broken off by Feng Tutu. Wait! Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Could it be that the spiritual stone hadn't been buried there on purpose? And what was down there was a spiritual stone mine. And top-grade spiritual stone for that matter. Feng Wu was thrilled. Seriously? She had grown up in the Feng manor. How could she have failed to notice a top-grade spiritual stone lode beneath the Feng manor, which was only one wall away from her own home? If that was the case with the Feng manor, what about the Feng manor? Sitting down with her legs crossed, Feng Wu sent a streak of spiritual essence down into the ground. However, with her current capability, she could only make it as deep as 15 meters. And she detected no such lode in those 15 meters. Feng Wu turned to Feng Tutu. Is there a lode underground over here? Feng Tutu looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Holding that top-grade spiritual stone in one hand, Feng Wu pointed at the ground with her free hand. This? Do we have it here? Feng Tutu shook its head, then nodded. What was that supposed to mean? Feng Wu was at a loss. But Feng Tutu was a cub after all. Even if it was able to detect treasure, the range would be rather limited. Feng Wu's hand curled into a fist. I have to get the Feng manor next door. That was a top-grade spiritual stone lode. Even an extremely prestigious family like Feng Sun's would be thrilled by such a discovery, not to mention Feng Wu. For no price was high enough for top-grade spiritual stones. Chapter 429 The Dispirited Crown Prince. Chapter 429 The Dispirited Crown Prince. If Feng Wu had only thought the Feng manor a possible choice before, she was now determined to become the next owner of the manor. Uncle Chiu, I don't think you should get involved. Let Yu Minji do it, Feng Wu said. She couldn't let Uncle Chiu be seen in the Feng manor, for many people knew Uncle Chiu as Feng Wu's steward and they would be easily reminded of Feng Wu. Before she was influential enough, Feng Wu would try to stay as low-key as possible. That way, her uncle wouldn't be alerted and she could avoid getting shouted at. Uncle Chiu nodded with a smile. No problem. He turned to leave after that, but he stopped all of a sudden. Turning around, he looked at Feng Wu in surprise. That gave Feng Wu the creeps. Uncle Chiu, what's wrong? Miss, tears welled up in Uncle Chiu's eyes. Yes. All eyes were on Uncle Chiu. What was wrong? Granny Zhao was especially nervous. Staring at Uncle Chiu, she prompted, Speak. What is it? Sob. Uncle Chiu broke into uncontrollable sobs. What on earth happened? Tell me. Gosh, you're killing me here. Granny Zhao was exasperated. She thought that some other unspeakable rumor about her mistress was going around again. I think I'm going to break through. Uncle Chiu looked at Feng Wu in excitement. Miss, I'm going to level up. Uncle Chiu had been stuck at level 8 for so many years. He had kept trying, but without success. However, after trying the manual Miss Feng Wu gave him last night. And today, Feng Wu was also pleasantly surprised. She had expected to see progress in Uncle Chiu in 10 days, but as it turned out, it only took Uncle Chiu 1 day to achieve that. It seemed that Uncle Chiu had more potential than she expected. That was great, for the stronger Uncle Chiu was, the safer this family would become. Feng Wu said in a hurry, Your top priority now is to break through. Miss this one and you'll never know when your next epiphany will be. Uncle Chiu nodded repeatedly, for Feng Wu was telling the truth. Uncle Chiu, leave the purchase of the house to me. I'll go get you Minji. But miss, I'm looking forward to seeing you as a level 9 spiritual master when I come back. Feng Wu beamed at him. Of course. Uncle Chiu nodded in excitement. Feng Wu thought to herself as she walked out that Uncle Chiu alone wasn't going to be enough to guard her family. She would have to hire more loyal servants when she had the chance. She was out of the manor and a street away from home by the time she realized something. She didn't know where Yu Minji lived. Uncle Chiu had his address, but… Feng Wu smiled in resignation. Uncle Chiu was at the critical point of his breakthrough, which could take anything from hours to days. She couldn't afford to wait that long. Well, she had to get Feng soon now, which didn't make any difference to her. The Crown Prince's residence. Your Royal Highness! Jun Linyuan was sitting there in a trance-like state. That was something he had never done before. But now, he was sitting by Nameless Lake and staring at the swans on it with a blank face. Chang San hurried over at that moment. As the captain of His Royal Highness's personal guard, Chang San had been sent to keep a watch on the Feng Manor. What had he ever done to deserve that? Your Royal Highness, Miss Feng Wu went to Northern Feng Mansion. Then, to Chang San's astonishment, his dispirited master bolted up from the rocking chair like a spring and grabbed him by the collar. What did you say? His Royal Highness was so frightening. Chang San shuddered at his furious voice. Chapter 430 Enemies are bound to meet. Chapter 430 Enemies are bound to meet. Why, Your Royal Highness? Chang San was genuinely frightened. Endless spiritual energy spread out from Jun Linyuan like a formidable dark storm. Crack. Turning around, Chang San saw that Nameless Lake, which had been rippling with blue waves a moment ago, had frozen over. Moreover, the ice was cracking as he watched. That was so terrifying. Jun Linyuan then tossed Chang San aside and headed for the gate. Chang San patted his chest, still shaken. To others, he was the extraordinary General Chang, but when the Crown Prince was around, Feng, who had been standing next to Jun Linyuan, darted a casual look at Chang San before following his master out. That look finally made Chang San see the light. That was it. He totally saw it now. Holy shit! General Chang, who was known for his seriousness and discretion, smacked himself on his thigh. How could he have missed that? His Royal Highness was obviously jealous. He was so in love with Miss Feng Wu. Recalling how he had offended Miss Feng Wu, Chang San broke into a cold sweat. At the same time, Feng Wu was outside Northern Feng Mansion. It was as grand as she had expected. Two enormous stone lions stood on either side of the gate, looking magnificent and mighty. Those eyes had an intimidating feel to them. Feng Wu was stopped at the gate. She got right to the point. I'm here to see Feng Sun. May we have your name, please? Impressed with Feng Wu's stunning beauty and posture, the captain of the guards asked the question politely. He was going through various names in his head. Since when was there such a beauty in the imperial capital? Why hadn't he heard of this? Tell him that it's Miss Wu of the Feng family, Feng Wu said proudly, crossing her hands behind her back. Miss Wu of the Feng family? The captain's eyes widened and he looked intrigued. That Miss Feng Wu who was supposed to have fallen? Miss Wu, please wait here a moment. The captain went inside in a hurry. Feng Sun's courtyard was called No Mercy. Right now, the door to No Mercy Yard was tightly shut. Knock, knock. The captain knocked on the door. Sir, miss. Go away. Feng Sun bellowed in irritation. But sir, it's… I don't care who it is. I'm not coming out even if it's Jun Linyuan himself. Seeing his bruised face in the mirror, young Lord Feng wanted to cry. How was he supposed to go out with a face like this? Rejected, the captain shook his head, sighed, and headed back. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but his master wouldn't see anyone. Miss Feng Wu, young Lord Feng isn't seeing any visitors today. Captain Zhou smiled at Feng Wu awkwardly. I'm afraid you'll have to come back some other day. Feng Wu frowned a little. He's not receiving visitors. No. He said so himself? Yes. Naturally, Captain Zhou omitted the part about Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu was bewildered. Why wouldn't Feng Sun see her? Something wasn't right here. Sorry about turning you down, Captain Zhou said attentively. Miss Wu, are you alright going back on your own? Shall I arrange an escort for you? To be fair, Captain Zhou was a kind man. However, why, isn't it Feng Xiaowu? What? You're in trouble and need young Lord Feng to save you? Said a taunting voice. Feng Wu looked up. So, it was true. Enemies were bound to meet. Chapter 431, The Feng Manor. Chapter 431, The Feng Manor. It was none other than Mu Yaoyao herself. Mu Yaoyao came out of northern Feng Mansion, walked around Feng Wu, and looked the latter up and down. She smacked her lips. Weren't you crazy about His Royal Highness? And weren't you cuddling with Yu Minji in the street after dark? Why, you've moved on to young Lord Feng now. Well, he won't even see you. Ha ha! After she was done laughing at Feng Wu, Mu Yaoyao said to Captain Zhou, This is Miss Feng Wu. That's right, the useless Miss Wu, who can think of nothing but chasing after men. Get her out of here before she upsets young Lord Feng. After that, Mu Yaoyao left with a gloating smile on her face. Immediately, everyone looked at Feng Wu strangely. Crazy about His Royal Highness. Cuddling with Yu Minji in the dark. And she was after young Lord Feng now? Wait. The girl was so pretty and elegant. Could she really be that kind of person? Captain Zhou frowned. He wasn't going to offer Feng Wu any help anymore, but was going to chase her away. Just then, a carriage stopped outside the manor, and some maids helped a graceful noble lady down from the magnificent vehicle. Little Feng Wu. Lady Northern Feng's eyes lit up when she spotted Feng Wu. Lady Northern Feng dismissed her maids Ziyuan and Lan Yuan immediately and hurried toward Feng Wu. Her pretty eyes twinkled with excitement as she said in surprise, Little Feng Wu, it's really you. Lady Northern Feng was really fond of Feng Wu, to the point that she wanted to smuggle Feng Wu into Northern Feng Mansion and raise the girl as her own daughter. She would have defended Feng Wu during the banquet at the Yen Manor, but one thing led to another, and before she could do so, Feng Wu was gone. Lady Northern Feng? Feng Wu smiled wholeheartedly. If it wasn't for the lady's help 5 years ago, Feng Wu wouldn't have been able to take her family all the way to northern border city when she had been so weak herself. It's really you. As a daughter of a general, Lady Northern Feng was very forthright herself. She greeted Feng Wu with a smack on the latter's shoulder. What were you thinking? You haven't come visit me after you got back. I see you've forgotten about me. Before Feng Wu could say another word, Lady Northern Feng went on. Look at you. You were such a pretty little thing back then, and you're stunning now. No man will be good enough for you. Captain Zhou mumbled something at that moment. What was that? Lady Northern Feng caught a word or two of what he said, and she frowned and asked the question in a harsh tone. Intimidated by Lady Northern Feng's stern countenance, Captain Zhou lowered his gaze. It was something Miss Mu said before she left. She said that Miss Feng wouldn't leave His Royal Highness alone, but she was hitting on Yu Minji the sacred son at the same time, and that she was moving on to our young lord now. Smack. Lady Northern Feng flared up. That's bullshit. What was she thinking? Xiao Wu would never do those things. Do all noble young ladies nowadays behave that way? Slandering other people with the most groundless rumors? Go get Mu Yaoyao back here. I'm going to question her myself. Despite how fierce the lady was, Captain Zhou never questioned anything she said. He saw the light immediately. So, Miss Mu had made all those things up. Young ladies nowadays were so unbelievable. Chapter 432 Lady Northern Feng. Chapter 432 Lady Northern Feng. Captain Zhou sent a team of his men to go after Mu Yaoyao. Lady Northern Feng, on the other hand, held Feng Wu's hand affectionately. Such a beautiful girl. There was both childlike innocence and wisdom in her eyes. The girl wore an ankle-length sky-blue dress and a crimson fur coat with piping made from white fox fur. The outfit set off her flawless skin, which was so fair that it seemed transparent. Lady Northern Fong loved that unassuming and neat look, not to mention that she found the girl's temperament most compatible. Come, let's catch up inside. Lady Northern Fong wanted to lead Feng Wu into the mansion. However, Feng Wu only smiled. Aunt Feng, I'm here to see Feng Sun. Feng Sun? Lady Northern Feng's eyes sparkled. The girl had come here just to see Feng Sun? Was she fond of Feng Sun? Lady Northern Feng was elated. Taking Feng Wu's hand, she asked in a trembling voice, Kiddo, you want to see Feng Sun? Do you know each other? Feng Wu nodded. We've met a few times. No problem. One of Lady Northern Feng's greatest wishes back then was to have little Feng Wu as a daughter-in-law, and she offered her help with delight. Come. I'll take you to that dumb boy. Tee-hee. Things are looking up. Lady Northern Feng thought happily to herself. Outside Feng Sun's no mercy yard. Thump, thump, thump. Lady Northern Feng banged on the door. Ziyuan and Lan Yuan exchanged looks, and both wished they could be somewhere else. Their lady behaved like anything but a noble lady. One would easily take her for a she-bandit. What? An impatient voice bellowed inside. Feng Sun was full of despair. Boss Jun showed up last night and challenged him for no reason. When Feng Sun was finally about to circulate his spiritual essence in his body to help with the bruises on his face, someone banged on his door. Is Feng Sun in the middle of something? Feng Wu frowned. Aunt Feng, I can come back some other day. Lady Northern Feng was exasperated. Her future daughter-in-law had come to visit and her stupid son was sabotaging everything. Lady Northern Feng gave the door a kick. Thump! The door to No Mercy Yard fell down at the impact. Ziyuan and Lan Yuan both looked up at the sky, pretending not to have seen anything. Let's go! Lady Northern Feng grabbed Feng Wu's hand and dragged her in. Feng Sun's stomach lurched when he heard his mother's voice. Shit! He was finally able to lighten the bruises on his face, only for them to expand in size, which made him look horrendous. Whoosh! The stylish young Lord Feng ran to his bed and wrapped a thick duvet around himself, head included. Lady Northern Feng charged in, dragging Feng Wu behind her. Feng Wu smiled in resignation. I think I can come back another day. No, I won't let you do that. Lady Northern Feng led Feng Wu into the bedroom. Wait, where is he? Looking around, Lady Northern Feng couldn't find Feng Sun anywhere. She was ready to leave when she noticed the situation on the bed. You brat. I was finally able to get Xiao Wu to come here, and you're hiding yourself under a duvet? Didn't you cry your eyes out when you were 3, saying that you were going to defeat His Royal Highness and take little Feng Wu away? Lady Northern Feng, the merciless mother, yanked the duvet off. Whoosh! Feng Sun looked up when he lost his cover. Lady Northern Feng burst out laughing when she saw Feng Sun's heavily bruised face. Chapter 433 Trust Me on This. Chapter 433 Trust Me on This. Feng Sun was full of despair. He knew it. He knew. Other mothers would burst into tears and shower their children with endearments if they found their babies beaten up like this, but what did his mother do? She laughed. Feng Sun was seriously considering the possibility that he was a giveaway in some buy-one-get-one-free deal. Ha 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 ha! Feng Sun looked at his mother with an impassive face. She wasn't just laughing. She was cracking up. Was she really his mother? You gosh! What happened to you, dummy? Who did this to you? Poor kid! Ha 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 ha! Lady Northern Feng laughed until she was in tears. Feng Sun felt like crying. What was his mother thinking? She could at least offer him some comforting words. No one did this to me. I had a fight. Fight. T ever heard of that? Feng Sun tried to defend himself. With whom? Boss June, of course. Feng Sun said proudly. Teehee, Lady Northern Feng burst into laughter again. Are you sure that was a fight? I think it was more like a slaughter. Feng Sun was speechless. He had to have a real mother somewhere in this world. Growing up, the biggest bully in his life was none other than his mother here. Feng Wu couldn't hold back her laughter anymore. Only then did Feng Sun realize that there was someone else in the room. Turning his bruised, swollen face, he saw who it was and he jumped out of bed. Little Feng Wu. Looking from Feng Sun's hideous face to Feng Wu's stunning one, Lady Northern Feng sighed inwardly. Her dumb boy was never going to be good enough for the brilliant girl. How sad. Lady Northern Feng rubbed her forehead. I'll leave you young people to solve your problems on your own. I'm too old for this. She left after that, taking Ziyuan and Lan Yuan with her. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu and was obviously ashamed of the way he looked right now. Why did Jun Linyuan beat you up? Feng Wu sat down on a hammock opposite Feng Sun in a familiar manner and grinned at him. I told you already, it was a fight. We fought. Feng Sun stressed. To be more precise, Boss Jun challenged me first. Poor Feng Sun. Everything he said was true, but Feng Wu wouldn't believe him. He's so much more powerful than you, why would he do that? He's not stupid. Feng Wu tossed a pine nut in her mouth and asked in an unhurried tone. Feng Sun scratched his head. He couldn't figure it out himself either. Why had Boss Jun done that? What's going on with Boss Jun? He warned me when he left, telling me to keep my distance from a person. But who did I get so close to? Feng Sun frowned. He was completely at a loss. So, he decided to put that aside and warned Feng Wu instead. Little Feng Wu, I need to tell you something. What? Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun in bewilderment. Feng Sun said earnestly, Boss Jun is really weird these days. He's peevish and unpredictable. So, don't get close to him, and when you see him, keep your distance. You better leave ASAP when you see him. Understand? Feng Wu was bemused. Is that really necessary? Of course. Of course it's necessary. Feng Sun stressed and patted his chest. I grew up with Boss Jun and I know him the best. Just trust me on this. Feng Wu said, whatever. Chapter 434 Boss Jun is here. Chapter 434 Boss Jun is here. I don't know why, but Boss Jun seems to find you particularly unlikable. Why, don't be sad. Feng Sun patted Feng Wu on the shoulder. I like you. Feng Wu brushed Feng Sun's hand off her shoulder and threw a dirty look at him. Just then, a gust of wind blew in through the gate. Rumble. No Mercy Yard, which was equipped with an advanced defense system, cracked under the impact. Feng Sun jumped at the sound, and before he knew it, he was shielding Feng Wu with his own body. He then looked up in the direction of the gate. The aura was formidable. The power was dark and terrifying. And the person could make one shudder in fear. Boss Jun. Seeing how dark Boss Jun's impeccable face was, Feng Sun felt his heart skip a beat. Feng Wu. Boss Jun bellowed. Get the hell out of there! Feng Sun saw the light right away. So, little Feng Wu had offended Boss Jun again. For some reason, Boss Jun seemed to find fault with everything she did. Since he was Jun Linyuan's childhood friend, Feng Sun thought he could intervene. Keeping Feng Wu behind him, he said, Boss Jun, if Feng Wu has offended you somehow, please go away. Jun Linyuan roared at Feng Sun. The terrifying sound wave tore the roof open. Feng Sun blanched. Little Feng Wu was a cripple and Boss Jun looked so pissed. One slap and he could easily kill the girl. At that thought, Feng Sun said in a hurry, Boss Jun, if you want to hit someone, hit me instead. Jun Linyuan thought his head was going to explode. He had warned Feng Sun already, telling him to stay away from Feng Wu, but what did he do? The two of them were alone in a room and were all lovey-dovey. Even someone with a milder temperament would lose their temper, let alone the crown prince, who was very irascible. Feng arrived in time to hear what Feng Sun said. And the steward rolled his eyes in resignation. Jun Linyuan darted a look at Feng. Feng took the hint right away. He went up to Feng Wu and said politely, "Miss Wu, this is a duel between two men. If you wouldn't mind, please wait outside." A duel between two men? Feng Wu frowned. That was a strange choice of words. "Xiao Wu, get out of here!" Feng Sun shouted at Feng Wu. Feng Wu glanced at Jun Linyuan, who was staring at Feng Sun with a grim look on his face, as if he was going to eat Feng Sun whole. Something didn't feel right. Feng Wu scratched her head, but couldn't figure out what it was. She had no choice but to go out as instructed. Feng followed her out and closed the gate behind them. Feng was about to drop Feng Wu some hints when a teenage boy scampered toward them. "Brother Feng, the third one." His eyes widened when he spotted Feng and he abruptly stopped talking. "Am Mr. Feng," the teenager faltered. Feng greeted him with a nod. "Hello, young Master Mu the Sixth." Young Master Mu the Sixth? As in Mu Yujie? The sixth son of Lord Mu? Feng Wu remembered young Master Mu as this boy who followed Feng Sun around when they were little. By the looks of it, he was still doing that. Young Master Mu looked surprised when he spotted Feng Wu. Such a pretty girl. Which family was she from? Just then, they heard Feng Sun's voice inside the room. "I don't care. I like little Feng Wu. I like her and I like her." Bang! Something heavy smashed on the floor and young Master Mu's stomach lurched. Chapter 435 BFFs. Chapter 435 BFF. Young Master Mu gleaned a lot of information from that statement. So, his brother Feng the Third liked a girl called Little Feng Wu. Feng turned a gaze devoid of warmth on the teenager. "Young Master Mu, can I help you with anything?" Young Master Mu's stomach lurched and he replied with an ingratiating smile on his face, "No, that's all right. I was just taking a walk. That's all." After that, young Master Mu darted another curious look at Feng Wu and ran off. After hanging out with Feng Sun all these years, of course he knew who Feng was. What did it mean when Feng showed up? It meant that Boss Jun was around. Young Master Mu was dauntless, but only when Jun Linyuan wasn't around. So, he turned around and fled the scene without hesitation. Feng looked at Feng Wu and sighed. She was such a smart girl, but why was she so dumb in this aspect? Feng was vexed. He couldn't just blurt it out. "Miss Wu, may I ask what you need young Master Feng for?" Feng Wu replied after some thought, "I have my eye on a manor and I'd like Feng Sun to purchase it on my behalf." "May I ask which manor is it?" Feng asked. "It's Grand Secretary Feng's manor." No sound came from inside the room and Feng Wu frowned. "I think it'll take them a while to finish. I'm off." She didn't think Jun Linyuan would do actual harm to Feng Sun, so she left after waving goodbye to Feng. Feng Wu decided to have a look at the Feng Manor after she left Northern Feng Mansion. However, she heard a racket as soon as she walked out into the street. An angry female voice shouted, "Duan Chaoga! You broke the antique vase and cut my hand. You're going to pay for this." Duan Chaoga? Feng Wu recalled one of her childhood playmates, whose name was Duan Chaoga. She was the neglected daughter of her father's concubine, and the Duan family offered her to Feng Wu as a partner in training. In fact, they were making Duan Chaoga a servant for Feng Wu. Needless to say, Feng Wu just treated the girl as her equal and a friend. Chaoga? Was that her? Feng Wu turned in that direction and she frowned at what she saw. It was a rotund girl. She was of the same height as Feng Wu, but she had to weigh about 3 times more. She was too overweight to even walk properly. She had a multi-layered chin on her very round face. However, Feng Wu could still recognize the girl she used to play with. It really was Duan Chaoga. Tears welled up in Feng Wu's eyes when she saw Duan Chaoga like this. What had Chaoga gone through? Why was she like this? Feng Wu then noticed that the person who had grabbed Duan Chaoga by the hair was Yi Yifei, the girl who wanted to purchase the Feng Manor. Duan Chaoga, you're going to pay for this. Pulling Duan Chaoga's hair, Yi Yifei smirked. You look like a pig. Weren't you Feng Wu's minion? Have you become as useless as her? You're the ugliest piece of shit I've ever seen. Say whatever you want about me, but leave Xiao Wu out of this. Chaoga charged at Yi Yifei with all her might. Caught by surprise, Yi Yifei was knocked over. Crumble. She bumped into a shelf full of antiques which all tumbled down, and she was buried in broken porcelain pieces. Feng Wu was speechless. Duan Chaoga was equally frightened. She stood there, looking flustered, and was at a loss over what to do. Smack. Duan Chaoga was slapped hard on her cheek. Chapter 436, How much? Chapter 436, How much? You bitch! How dare you push Sister Yifei? Things have changed since 5 years ago. Kneel and apologize to Sister Yifei. With those words, a girl tried to kick Duan Chaoga in the back of her knees. That's enough! A chilly voice rang out. The girls looked up and saw a stunning girl walk over. She was as pretty as a picture. She was so beautiful. Who was she? Xiao Wu? Are you Xiao Wu? Duan Chaoga, who had worshipped Feng Wu since she was little, asked in a trembling voice. Feng Wu? Staring at Feng Wu, Yi Yifei was astonished. How could anyone be this beautiful? Zhua Qingluan was known for her beauty, but compared with Feng Wu. Yes, it's me, Feng Wu replied with a frown. What's going on? Xiao Wu, sob, like someone who had just found a rock in the shifting sands of her existence. Chaoga dashed toward Feng Wu in excitement. Xiao Wu, you're back. You're really back, sob. Yi Yifei smirked. I was wondering who would be ignorant enough to stick their nose into this. So, it's you, Miss Wu of the Feng clan. Miss Feng Wu, aren't you a useless piece of shit now? Are you sure you're not biting off more than you can chew? Feng Wu glanced at Chaoga. And Chaoga quickly told her what happened. It was as Feng Wu suspected. Yi Yifei had asked for the antique piece Chaoga was holding, and with no idea how to handle such a piece properly, Chaoga had handed Yi Yifei the whistling vase straight away. However, Yi Yifei drew back her hands before the vase reached her, and with a crash, the vase fell to the floor with a crisp sound, shattered, and cut Yi Yifei's hand in the process. This is an antique vase made by imperial order in the previous dynasty and is one of a kind. Yi Yifei stared at Feng Wu with a half-smile. Isn't Chaoga your minion? I'm sure you won't stand by and do nothing. Feng Wu glanced at the whistling vase, and she saw immediately that it was a genuine piece with a signature on the bottom. Made by Yue. Yue was a renowned formation master of the previous dynasty, and a whistling vase could do more than just whistle. As expected, the owner of Elegant Ink Gallery came out with a long face. Miss Duan, that was a whistling vase made by Master Yue himself, and it was reserved for a client. What am I going to do now that you've destroyed it? It wasn't me, Chaoga pointed at Yi Yifei. She drew back her hands first. Mr. Mo said with a grimace, Miss Duan, you should have followed the rules of an antique shop. When other customers ask for something you're holding, you should put it down first, then the other party can pick it up. Duan Chaoga shook her head. How was she supposed to know that? Feng Wu realized that Yi Yifei had set Chaoga up. Mr. Mo handed Feng Wu the base of the vase. Look, see that? It proves that this is Master Yue's work. Miss, I'm not trying to trick you. It really is Master Yue's work. And how much is it worth? Feng Wu darted an indifferent glance at Mr. Mo. To Feng Wu, Chaoga had always been a little sister to her. She couldn't bring herself to see Chaoga trembling like a bunny like this. Moreover, those people were doing this to Chowga because she was Feng Wu's friend. At the end of the day, Duan Chowga had been implicated because of Feng Wu. Mr. Mo smiled bitterly. Miss Feng, Master Yu Wei's work can't be measured in terms of money, for it comes with a formation, which can help with cultivation. I believe you should know that. Chapter 437, The Whistling Vase. Chapter 437, The Whistling Vase. Master Yu Wei's work indeed comes with spiritual formations? Feng Wu nodded. So, this whistling vase is worth 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones? Mr. Mo smiled. 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones? Are you kidding me? Where am I supposed to get that many spiritual stones? Chowga was terrified. It was common knowledge that spiritual stones were the hard currency in the cultivation circle, more so than actual gold and silver. However, spiritual stones were scarce in quantity and supply always fell short of demand. Hence, the price of spiritual stones had always been exorbitantly high. Well, you can't come up with that much money, but your Feng Wu can. Right, Miss Feng Wu? Yi Yifei glanced at Feng Wu with a half-smile. I'd like to see you cast Duan Chowga aside. Of course Feng Wu wasn't going to abandon her friend. Moreover, she needed to find an opportunity to talk to Chowga. How had that petite, slim girl from 5 years ago become such a butterball? Although, the most important thing now was to take care of Mr. Mo and Yi Yifei. Feng Wu ignored Yi Yifei and turned to Mr. Mo. 1,000 spiritual stones would be a fair price if this were an authentic work by Master Yu Wei. Actually, you could almost call it a bargain. Mr. Mo's kind smile vanished and his face twisted. What? Is Miss Feng suggesting that this whistling vase is a fake? Of course it's fake, Feng Wu said without hesitation. Mr. Mo flared up. Miss Feng, are you saying that elegant ink gallery knowingly cheats our customers? Glancing at the pile of broken porcelain pieces on the floor and the shelf that Yi Yifei knocked over when Chowga bumped into her, Mr. Mo smirked. Good, you got my hint. Feng Wu nodded. Chowga is responsible for breaking this whistling vase because she didn't know the rules of an antique shop. That's a lesson she needs to learn. However, we're not going to pay the 1,000 spiritual stones. You'll get 1,000 taels of silver instead. Mr. Mo's face darkened. Yi Yifei snorted before he could say anything. 1,000 taels of silver? Are you paying off a beggar? Do you know who the owner of Elegant Ink Gallery is? Who might that be? Feng Wu was actually intrigued. Mr. Mo said, This whistling vase is our 6th young master's favorite. He reserved it for his mother's birthday, and I don't think the young master will find 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones enough. By now, a large crowd had gathered round, but they stayed on the fringe so as not to accidentally knock over some antique pieces. The 6th young master? Is he referring to the 6th son of Lord Mu? That's him all right. Young Master Mu is well known in the imperial capital for his unruly behavior. He's well-connected and gets along with people both above board and underground. The east side of the city is his territory. There was this time when a third-ranked official came to the imperial capital and offended young Master Mu somehow. That guy ended up being locked up a few days after that. His father is a lord. Of course he's well-connected. That's not it. Lord Mu isn't influential enough to remove a third-ranked official from his post. Young Master Mu has a much more formidable acquaintance than his father, said that person in a mysterious voice. Young Master Mu? That jogged Feng Wu's memory. That teenager she met at Feng Sun's place. However, she couldn't connect that capering teenager with this big boss that everyone was talking about, who associated with both the lawful and lawless. That teen couldn't be the same person, right? Mr. Mo let others introduce the background of this shop before turning his cold gaze on Feng Wu. Miss Feng, are you sure you're going to get involved in this? Feng Wu nodded. Mr. Mo smirked. I think I know where the Feng Manor is. If Miss Feng can't come up with 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones, we'll go fetch it from your clan. Chapter 438 Chowga. Chapter 438 Chowga. Everyone looked at Feng Wu strangely after those words. This Miss Feng wasn't the one who broke the whistling vase, so she shouldn't have to pay for it. Anyone else would have stayed as far away as possible, let alone make it their responsibility. Little did they expect that Feng Wu would take everything upon herself, which was quite an honorable thing to do. A wise-looking old man in a plain outfit observed Feng Wu with great interest. An elderly steward with a stern, impassive face stood beside him. Despite how stoic he looked, there was no question that he was exceptionally capable in cultivation. Xiao Wu, Chowga was overwhelmed with a sense of guilt. She knew how arrogant the people of the Feng clan were, and what a hard time those people must be giving Xiao Wu. She was here to buy a gift for Xiao Wu today, but look at what she had done. She couldn't do anything without causing trouble. Chowga felt like slapping herself. Mr. Mo's words didn't make Feng Wu flinch, and she only smiled proudly. Mr. Mo, I'm afraid you won't get a chance to do that. Is that so? Mr. Mo, as well as everyone else, was intrigued. Why was Miss Feng so confident that she didn't need to pay for it? Because this whistling vase is a fake. Feng Wu announced it in a calm voice. A fake? Everyone else looked at Mr. Mo in astonishment. Fake. Elegant Ink Gallery sells knockoffs. I bought an incense burner just the other day from this shop. I think I need to have it appraised. Mr. Mo was furious. Face dark, he glared at Feng Wu. Miss Feng, you shouldn't brag about taking responsibility if you can't afford it. Are you going to slander our elegant ink gallery to avoid paying the bill? What's wrong with young ladies nowadays? How can you be so vicious? Yi Yifei crossed her arms and chimed in offhandedly. Mr. Mo, not all young ladies are like this. Miss Wu here is an exception. She's that useless fifth daughter of the Feng family. Everyone let out cries of surprise. Feng Wu used to be so famous 5 years ago. With her talent, everyone in the Junwu Empire thought that she would become the second Jun Linyuan. She's that Feng Wu who was called a genius from young. The one who lost all her abilities 5 years ago. His Royal Highness cancelled his engagement to her, that Feng Wu. And, instantly, all eyes were on Feng Wu. This was the girl that had almost become His Royal Highness's wife. That old man in the crowd also gave Feng Wu another glance, as if deep in thought. Chowga almost broke into tears. She would rather die than see Feng Wu humiliated like this. Xiao Wu, please leave. I can handle this on my own. Chowga tried to push Feng Wu away, her tone adamant. Feng Wu only smiled and nodded at Chowga. She then turned to Mr. Mo. You can't turn a fake piece into an authentic one, even if it's been broken and mixed in with 1,000 other pieces. You? Mr. Mo smirked. Fine. If you say it's a fake, prove it. Do that and you won't have to pay a penny. Feng Wu nodded. Deal. Xiao Wu you, Chowga really wanted to slap herself. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.